Join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
Good afternoon, it is 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also GB News presenter Father Calvin Robinson. Oh, hang on, I'm in there as well. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Nana. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Large groups of migrants have clashed with French police near Dunkirk after the authorities stopped their attempts to cross the Channel. Migrants have been seen attacking French police officers with stones and tree branches. Meanwhile, the force used pepper spray to push them back. GB News was told the vast majority of migrants were young men, with 1 or 2 women and children. Meanwhile, dozens of Albanian nationals are protesting in central London against the British government's immigration policies. Many are still furious about the Home Secretary's comments earlier this month when she likened the number of Albanian asylum seekers arriving in the UK to an invasion. Close to 40,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel in small boats so far this year. Britain and France are expected to agree a deal as soon as Monday to ramp up their joint efforts to reduce the numbers. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace says Russia's retreat from the city of Kherson marked what he calls another strategic failure for Moscow as he pledges continued support for Ukraine. There have been scenes of jubilation across Ukraine after the liberation of Kherson from Russian control. It was the only regional capital city captured by Russian troops since the invasion began in February. Vladimir Putin's spokesperson has denied the move as a defeat, saying the region remains part of Russian territory after it was annexed in September. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba says there isn't a single indicator that Russia is sincerely seeking peace talks.
The only response we always received from them, even when we sat down at the table, was, here is the list of ultimatums, take it or leave it. And the set of these ultimatums meant full capitulation and unconditional surrender of Ukraine.
Tory MPs have come out in defence of the Deputy Prime Minister after he was accused of being rude and aggressive towards civil servants. It's reported that multiple sources have alleged Dominic Raab created a culture of fear in his previous role as Justice Secretary. Labour described the accusations as deeply troubling, saying they raise more questions about Mr Sunak's judgment by appointing him. Levelling Up Shadow Minister Alex Norris says bullying shouldn't happen in government.
It's cowards that bully their staff, people who, in that power imbalance, can't really do very much about it and simply have to put up with what we've seen happen. I mean, obviously, we're only reading in the last sort of 24 hours some of the issues relating to the Deputy Prime Minister and what he may or may not have thrown, and it's important that that's given the full airing. But we do know what happened with Gavin Williamson, that's accepted. But fundamentally, I just don't think they should do that, and I don't really think that that should be very controversial.
Essex police say an officer injured during Just Stop All protests earlier this week has thanked the public for their support. The crash on the M25 involved 2 lorries as eco-activists blocked traffic on Wednesday. Police say the airbags deployed after the officer was thrown from his motorbike. The officer has asked to remain nameless but is recovering from his injuries. Well, counting continues in the US midterm elections with the race for control of the US Congress neck and neck. Republicans are expected to win the House of Representatives, but the Senate races are too close to call, with both Republicans and Democrats having 49 votes. The biggest concerns for voters are the economy and abortion. The women's England rugby team have suffered heartbreak after losing to New Zealand in the World Cup final. England's Red Roses dominated the first half despite one player getting a red card. But their rivals, the Black Ferns, came back strong, scoring a try in the last 9 minutes to give a 34-31 victory. There were record numbers of spectators in the stadium, with more than 40,000 tickets sold. Fans say despite the loss, they're still proud of the team.
It could have gone either way for quite a lot of the game, so I think in this room everyone was just really passionate about England women and the Loughborough Lightning girls here, so we're all pretty gutted, but we're also really proud of everyone out there. Like, it's a massive honour for them to represent the Rose and put on a great performance like they did today.
And renowned graffiti artist Banksy has revealed his latest artwork on the side of a damaged building in Ukraine. It shows a female gymnast balancing on her hands on rubble at the bottom of a destroyed building. Murals spotted in and around Kyiv has led to speculation the artist is working in the war-torn country. Another, not yet officially claimed by Banksy, shows the Russian president being flipped during a judo match with a young boy. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Nana Akua.
So good afternoon. It is fast approaching 7 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. OK, now, I understand that people fleeing persecution will have to make a perilous journey to reach a safe country, and that the safety of France will attempt a further crossing. Some of them, once they reach there, will attempt a further peril to cross the Channel out of choice to build a life here in the UK. Maybe they've got family here. And who can blame them? On the whole, this country is pretty amazing. People fought for the freedom of every citizen here. But is this the behaviour of desperate people fleeing persecution from the safety of France, or is it an organised mob looking to get their own way and cross the Channel at all costs? You decide. Take a look. So if you're listening on radio, that's a mob of people hurling makeshift weapons, missiles, rocks and all sorts, and they're mainly men. Last night, GB News filmed large swathes of people heading towards the dunes and woods near the beach to launch dinghies in France. Now, the French authorities, expecting this would happen because bad weather had stopped the illegal crossings for about 2 weeks, were out in force as hundreds of migrants headed towards the village of Gravelines on the coast for a mass launch of small boats. Basically, large groups of migrants then clashed with the French police, hurling rocks and missiles after their attempts were thwarted. And between 5,000 to 6,000 people are currently hanging about in a load of makeshift camps around Dunkirk, which is near Gravelines, waiting for their chance to cross the Channel. Would you call that an invasion? I would. I mean, I'd be pretty annoyed if I lived around there. I can only imagine what the people on the southern coast of this country are dealing with. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't assist those in real need, but this is an organised racket, and someone somewhere is making a whole heap of cash out of this misery. Now, one source told GB News that the people smuggling gangs have become very experienced in reading both wind and tide in the Channel. It wouldn't surprise me if they were funding the charities supporting the appeals by migrants when they get to the UK. So it was quite good to see Rishi and Macron talking, even if they did look a bit slimy together. The UK government has agreed to pay the French an additional £60 million to help boost the security presence along the French coast. Finally, the UK and France working together closely. The childish blame game has stopped because it's in both of our interests. And if Rishi can pull this off and protect the UK's borders, he's on to an election winner. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, has the civil service become drunk on power? Now, the Public and Commercial Services Union, which represents civil servants, basically those mostly in government bodies, so, for example, the Home Office, voted in favour of strike action. Now, its president stated that its key demand was to oust the Tory party from power. They actually said that is actually put down. However, the civil service is meant to remain politically neutral and implement policies created by the government in charge. They're not supposed to go all hell for leather and decide who should be in control and then work their best aim to get out the current incumbent. This all calls into question whether democracy is under threat in the UK. Have civil servants become drunk on power? Then at 4:50, it's Royal Roundup time, and Royal biographer Angela Levin will be live in the studio with an update on all the latest going on. And on the menu, the antics from I'm a Celebrity. Have you seen all that? Where Zara Phillips' husband, Mike, is a campmate. He does such a good job. Did you see the bit where he took the spider down? What a man. Probably not supposed to say that. Rumours from the palace suggest that the royals aren't too pleased with his appearance. Really? I think he's doing a good job. Anyway, at 5, it's this week's Difficult Conversation. Anti-Bullying Week is set to commence on Monday, and to help shine a light on the issue, which is prevalent of all ages, bullying, which can lead to people feeling isolated and lonely, can also lead to mental health problems. So joining me live is the CEO of the charity, the Diana Award, which was founded in honour of Princess Diana. And also, they'll be talking about the campaign. That's on the way in the next hour. As ever, tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also GB News presenter Father Calvin Robinson. Right, I'm going to start with you, Father, because obviously we're talking tough here. Migration. Finally, it feels like the British and French are working a little bit more closely together. What's your perception of this?
I don't buy it. I don't think it's in France's interest to work with us. They want rid of these migrants as much as we do. I think we've got to look bigger, further afield, and look at what's actually going on. Why are the majority of migrants crossing the Channel illegally Albanian? Why are the vast majority of them supporting these illegal gangs that are people smuggling, that are contributing to the detriment of our society? And what is the cause of that situation? So what's going on in Albania? We have an illegitimate government. We have a lot of gang crime. How can we help Albania solve their problems so that people aren't fleeing to come over here and work on weed farms? Well,
you had is it President or Prime Minister? I don't know which one they've got, but he was there talking about the situation, and he basically said that at one point we were sort of seen as a great nation, and now what's happening is almost laughable in terms of our politics, which I can't disagree with him on that. But he didn't sound like he was at all understanding what the situation is. It sounded like he was almost saying that we are being unfair to the Albanians. And actually, there's a protest in London today. Well, there's a protest in London today, isn't it, with a lot of people from Albania saying it's not fair.
I've never seen anything worse. We had Armistice Day yesterday. We've got Remembrance Sunday tomorrow. And what have they done? They're going to put the Albanian flag over Winston Churchill's statue. I think that is utterly disrespectful. You're in someone else's home. Have some respect.
Yeah,
Lizzie,
it's disgusting. Well, it's alarming. I totally agree with Calvin. It is alarming, and the situation is getting worse. And I want to say, we see the French there trying to help and take action, but where have they been? Where have they been with the last year? It's too late. We've got 40,000 here illegally at the moment, and it's taking forever to be processed. That's the problem. We need to act and do something different. Wasn't it Einstein who said the first sign of madness is doing the same thing and then, hoping a different answer? Yeah. And the fact is, the Home Secretary needs to act fast, but we need to get rid of the European Convention of Human Rights, because we will not be able to do anything without that being, we've been dictated by European judges.
But other countries are able to disseminate the people who come to their country quite effectively, and they're under the UNHCR as well. So it doesn't really make sense that it seems to be almost as though every time it's Britain, there seems to be some big reason why we can't.
We're a legalistic society, so we follow the law to the letter of the law. Other countries in Europe don't necessarily do that. They skirt around it, and their infrastructure is different. But also,
but how can they get away with it and do that?
Because they don't care in the same way that we care.
Yeah, but why
also other countries?
It's just not on our nature.
But other countries give easier visas, don't they, to Albanians, and we don't.
That's the problem. We have, one person working on these asylum applications that take years. Why don't we get a whole department working on these applications and get them through like that?
Well, those that are about to strike, aren't they? They're calling on strike action, aren't
But I think we've got to make a change. I think Rishi has to look at this. OK, he's made friends with the French because of what Liz Truss had said, friend or foe. Apparently a little bromance happening there.
Well, that's good,
in their very tight trousers. Good luck to them. But it's a little bit too late for that. Yeah, but we need to take action, do something different. I don't know. I mean, I was thinking thinking today, get the military there, hand it over to the military. We need to get tough and mean it, you know, because they think it's an easy option, an easy place. We're housing them, you know, we're putting them up in hotels.
I don't really understand why. And the other thing is, there's obviously the legal side of it, because when they are here, then there's all these appeals and things like that. Somebody is funding there's a lot of charity kind of bodies that seem to be funding all of this, and this must be part of the whole smuggling racket, because I can't quite understand.
It's a must.
They're all in it together. Well, and there's got to be people on this side of the pitch dealing with it in the same way as well.
Part of the problem is Theresa May's modern-day slavery laws. So these people know that if they get in this country and say, at some point in my life I was a modern-day slave, they don't have to prove it, they just have to say that. That gives them 40 days of leverage in this country where we can't touch them, we can't do anything with them. And in those 40 days, they reach out to the human rights activist lawyers who are further putting these policies into place that enable them to stay in the country. So it's all illegitimate, it's all fraudulent, and they know what they're doing.
But surely it's better if our governments, the French government, we work together, we smash these gangs, we find out and work together.
It appears to be trying to do that. It appears to be.
But it's a little bit too late. We've got 40,000 over here, and the hotels are bursting with them. Diseases breaking out.
Well, but I mean, frankly, better late than never. I'd rather see something happening than nothing at all. So they appear to be doing something, but I just don't understand why we're so lackadaisical about it, and why in this country, in terms of the processing, it's not just the French side. When they get here, we are sort of processing them so slowly, and it's like, oh, we'll just put them in another hotel, we'll spend another 7 million a day, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's probably more than that. And then there's people actually not even going to the processing centre now. And then you've got now people who've come to this country, potentially legally or illegally, outside, you know, who are Albanian, protesting, saying it's not fair. You're saying we're invaders. We're not talking about the people protesting if you came to this country. No, but if you came to this country legally, by legal means, not on a boat or a dinghy across the channel, then no, you're not an invader. You're just somebody who came in through the legal route. But
you can come here on any visa.
Yes, you're an invader.
Come to this country on any visa and you can claim asylum. There are the legal processes in place. You don't have to pay these dodgy people smugglers. You don't have to come over the channel illegally. There are ways to do it properly, and if they're not doing it, they are invading.
But we have to do something different.
Why do you think that people are so hooked up on the word invader? Instead of why are they doing that? I mean, because if you look at the dictionary definition, this is exactly what's happening.
I think they link it like invading to military, and it's like this. But it is, you know, as you said, if you look up the word, that's what it is. They're illegal, they're criminals, and they shouldn't be here. And for all those saying, oh no, they're poor refugees, mother and child, look, they are men of military age. I've only seen mainly men, I'm sorry, and those scenes today are frightening and alarming, and I really do feel, I mean, my friends that live on the coastline of Kent, it's dangerous for the people coming over in the boats, they could drown, and for the taxpayer, it's costing us $7 billion. You know, the money is crazy.
Well, just to put it out there, there will be some who are coming through because they are fleeing persecution. Not everybody will be taking this as some sort of scam, but there does seem to be overwhelming evidence that would suggest that the majority of the people coming across that way are not here doing for good things at all. And there's a lot of people there. From what I can see, there's a lot of people who aren't here to do good for this country, and we need to get a handle of it.
I know you have to provide the balance in saying that. I don't think they are fleeing persecution. I don't think it's possible to flee persecution from France to England, and that's where they're coming from. None of them are coming from any dodgy country. They're coming from across the Channel, from France. So for them to claim that they're fleeing persecution is incorrect and fraudulent.
Well, yeah, but France is a safe country. They don't have to stop in the first safe country.
They don't, but they should.
Well, they should, but they don't. So maybe they speak English, or maybe they've got family or something like that.
They're picking and choosing the best place.
That'll be the argument. They are picking and choosing the best bits. I don't know whether I would do the same if I'm with them. But if they are genuine, because there will be some genuine ones, even though you say I'm sure they all are, there will be some genuine
ones. If they've crossed through Italy, Spain, Germany, France, then they're no longer refugees.
But they may well be trying to get to somebody who's there to protect and look after them. So that's not... I don't condemn all, but I'm just saying that there will be some.
But the worry is they are landing. They're landing on our beaches, and a lot of them are just going missing. They're here today, gone tomorrow. And then what? You know, and it's very, very frightening.
It's frightening. Those people on the coast can't leave there as they would have done normally. Their sense of community will be gone. They'll see people running across their fields and gardens and things. You don't put your washing out there. It's not on. It's simply not on. And they're the taxpayers paying for it.
The government's #1 job is to protect the borders, to protect the people within the borders, and they're not doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I say get the military in. I really do. We need tougher action.
Well, it would be good, and we also need the Home Office and processing centres to get off their backsides, get back in the office and get on with their jobs, because I don't quite understand why. And some of them are about to go on strike now, and they're talking about, well, we'll be talking about that in a moment. We'll get stuck into that in a bit, yes. Right, so what do you think? Keep your thoughts coming. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, our great British debate this hour. I'm asking, has the civil service become drunk on power? Now, the union that represents civil servants has voted in favour of strike action. Now, this is a big union that looks after many different elements of government. So, people who are in the Home Office and all those different elements of government. Now, its president stated that its key demand, listen very carefully, was to oust the Tory party. Yeah, but they're civil servants, right? They're meant to remain politically impartial. They're meant to remain neutral. So, I mean, that calls into question whether democracy is actually under threat, because if we vote for a government and the civil servants decide that they're not happy with it, so they don't comply with what's been asked, then that is a risk. What do you think? Have civil servants become drunk on power? Send me your thoughts. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk. Tell me what you think. You can also tweet at GB News. I've got a poll up right now asking that very question. Is the civil service drunk on power? Cast your vote now. We'll be back after this.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry for most, with some cloud in the far east and west. Let's take a look at the details. A dry but cloudy evening for most of southwest England, with low cloud and perhaps fog possible over the hills. Clearer spells at times and breezy, particularly at the coasts. Cloudy for some in southeast England, with light winds allowing some mist and fog to develop under any clearer spells, particularly in the east. Wales will see a cloudy evening on Saturday, with some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle possible over the hills, breezy at western coasts. Staying dry across the Midlands, with plenty of clear skies in the evening and overnight, a little breezy at times but feeling mild with temperatures around 13 Celsius. North East England will see a cloudy evening, although some clearer spells at times. Some low cloud, mist and fog possible, particularly at eastern coast. Light winds and temperatures of 11 or 12 Celsius. Staying dry across most of Scotland, with some patchy cloud in places, although outbreaks of light rain and drizzle possible in the far west. Generally light winds but breezy in the west. A cloudy evening across Northern Ireland, with some patchy mist and fog, although a few clearer spells possible in the east. Feeling breezy, particularly at the coasts and over high ground. Staying dry for most, although patchy rain and drizzle in the east, some clearer spells and breezy in the west. And that's how it...
This Sunday on Mark Dolan Tonight, my Mark Meets guest is one of the most colourful and controversial politicians in the country, former Business Secretary Jacob Rees-Mogg. We'll get his views on the economy, on the nurses' strike, on Brexit and our new PM Rishi Sunak. That's Jacob Rees-Mogg live on Mark Dolan Tonight, this Sunday from 9.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own news from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Good afternoon. It's coming up to 25 minutes after 4 o'clock. We are live on GB News, on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now, before the break, we're discussing the migrants, the crossings and the channel business. Let's see what you've been saying. Alison says the clip of the people in France showed groups of thugs is shocking. Why should we or France allow them in our country? The French should be returning them, not keeping them there or allowing them to come. Well, I actually agree with you. If you see people doing that, breaking the law, then I think at that point, hey, Nana, you don't have to live in the south. My small town has changed beyond repair. I believe this is due to the migrants. Well, I mean, yes, it could be, especially if they're just docking off on the side and then just running off and not actually going to the processing centres. I mean, you saw in the village in France, just in Dunkirk, next to it, there's about 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 makeshift migrant camps there as well. We simply can't go on with that. Keep your thoughts coming. But now it's time for the great British debate this hour. I'm asking, has the civil service become drunk on power? Now, earlier this week, the Public and Commercial Services Union, which represents civil servants, so that is those running government departments, they voted in favour of strike action. Now, their president, Fran Heathcote, says that the union's key demand was to get the Conservatives out and usher in a Labour government. Now, seriously, should she be saying that? Her comments strongly mirror those of the union's General Secretary, Mark Sawatka, who back in September said a coordinated mass walkout could cause chaos and succeed in driving the Conservatives out of government. Now, this latest revelation will put pressure on the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, to go further on anti-strike legislation. Liz Truss was talking about it. She was quite serious about it. Will Rishi continue? A government source condemned the union, saying it was trying to cause chaos at Christmas and ruin the festive plans of thousands of families just to help their masters in the Labour Party. So for our great British debate this hour, I'm asking, has the civil service become drunk on power? I'm joined now in the studio by former Labour Minister for Europe, Dennis McShane. Dennis, I want to ask you, are you surprised at hearing a comment of that nature?
Oh, from those two, not at all. They're very well known as fairly left-wing loudmouths. They don't have any influence in the Labour Party. They represent an extraordinary mixture of different people working as middle rank and lower ranks grades in the civil servants. For example, the drivers' agency. Remember, there was a big strike there a year or two ago.
Yes, I do remember that, yes.
That's a PCS, so they're not focused anywhere. They service ministers. It's ministers who take decisions, and as we're now learning, with ministers like Dominic Raab and Suella Braverman and Priti Patel, who are incredibly rude and offensive to civil servants, which doesn't...
Well, I mean, but you say that. Where did you hear that, though? I know she was brought up, but you don't know that for sure, though, do you?
Sorry, we've got on-record quotes from people who have been offered the chance to stop working for Dominic Raab because he's just so offensive. And now, that's his business. But generally, professionally, if you're a minister, I had no problems. Tony Blair had no problems. Margaret Thatcher was unbelievably polite to all civil servants, and she got things done as a result. But to go back to the PCS, look, I mean, this loudmouth stuff about kicking out the Conservative government, it does Labour no good at all. Their cause, I mean, every public sector worker. Look at all the poor nurses just voted. Royal College of Nursing never voted to go on strike, but the Tories are so grinding down the healthcare sector that even these lovely people who look after us all the time feel impelled.
Well, I hear you say the Tories, but that's a historic thing. I think most of the governments in power have started to cut back on the NHS. That's an organisational structure that's been bloated over the last...
Terribly sorry, not true. I mean, Tony Blair improved massively. I've got a little finger operation here. It was done on this hand about 12 years ago. It's called Dupuytren's. This is not painful.
I don't mean to be cruel, Dennis, but spare me the detail.
All right.
I'm going to get Claire.
It was done instantly 10, 12 years ago when Tony Blair was...
Was there a pandemic before? There wasn't, was there? There was no pandemic.
I met the surgeon on Friday. He said, well, it could take a long time. We'll have to refer up. And he's very kind, but lovely people. But we need medical care now.
But we're talking about civil service.
Anyway.
All right, yes, Dennis, thank you. I hope your finger's better. Right, now I'm joined by Conservative councillor and former special advisor to the Home Office, Claire Pearsall. Claire, thank you so much for joining me. OK, so, Claire, if you were Rishi Sunak, how would you respond to civil servants saying such a thing as that? Because Dennis seems to think that, oh, they're just people who just talking too much. But that is, I think, a threat to our democracy if civil servants can actively behave in a manner that would stop government policy.
Well, that's right. I've never heard quite a statement come out before from people who are supposed to be politically impartial. Now, they will all have their own views, but when they're in the service of the state, then they should keep those to themselves. And I think that kind of statement to come out is incredibly damaging. The reputation of the civil service is already in tatters. So I think to push through for strike action merely to get rid of the government of the day just shows how much power they think they really have. And I think that's quite a disturbing solution to everything, is to just allow them to do it. Because what happens next? What happens when they strike? What other demands are they going to bring in? They already work from home. They already spend taxpayers' money on things like mindfulness apps for all of their staff. So you do understand why people are angry at them, and people in politics are taking all of the flak when actually the civil service are not behind them and not doing the jobs that they're supposed to do.
Well, you've seen the state of the passport office and all these civil servants who insist that they're going to be staying at home and not coming out of their houses to work within the government body. But the fact that they are actually able to say that out loud and think that that is acceptable. I mean, for example, what would the consequences be of a mass walkout by civil servants? Would it be more damaging than a nurses' strike, in your view?
I think it will be incredibly damaging because there are departments which rely on a certain output. If you take the Department for Work and Pensions, incredibly busy, you're looking at people's pension payments, cold weather payments, benefits payments. So if those are to be stopped, then that directly affects people's lives, especially when we're coming up to the cost of living crisis where extra money is going out to those who are the most vulnerable. So that's one side of it. There's also the education sector. I would hate for that to come to a grinding halt. I think our children and teachers have probably put up with enough over the last 2 years without having yet more disruption. But also, I think the health service as a whole is in real trouble. And it's quite interesting to hear Dennis look at Tony Blair's legacy, when I think that this has been successive governments have failed to deal with the NHS as a whole. And now everybody, the NHS, all of the unions are just holding the country to ransom.
Well, I'm going to bring that back to Dennis. Dennis is here, so I'll let him respond to that whilst he's in the studio. Dennis, you heard what Claire says. Well, what's your response with regard to that? She's of an opinion, as I was, that actually it's successive governments.
Oh, it goes back, if you like. I mean, I'm getting now, talking about Brexit. Somebody tweeted the other day to me, well, it all started with the Highland clearances. So you can, of course, go back and back and back.
Yes.
But to be on this issue, I mean, Claire's got a perfectly fair point. Let me say that in many countries, in this country, where there have been civil service strikes, very often people haven't noticed and they've just fizzled out because the payments you refer to are automatic, they're on computer. But this is actually the result of Mrs. Thatcher. She said that if you had a fully democratic strike ballot in a democracy, and it's got to be a good, solid majority, you've got the right to go on strike. These are Thatcher strikes.
Yeah, but you say these are Thatcher strikes. She's not here to talk about that. What I'm looking at are people who potentially have control, who can make a difference. Claire, you in your view, then, what do we do about it?
Well, I think this is a really difficult one, and it requires the politicians to sit round with the unions. And we always have this endless ongoing conversation, but the unions don't wish to give in. And I think they've been emboldened by the strikes that have happened previously, and we're going to see more of it. So it does need a little bit of negotiation, and that's what unions are there for. And quite honestly, some of them are very, very good at negotiating, and you need to have that. But if they're not willing to come round the table, then I think the government is really stuck as to what to do, and we need to be able to keep the country running, and we cannot just allow people to walk out because they feel like it.
Well, listen, Claire, thank you so much for your thoughts. That's Claire Pearsall. She's a Conservative councillor and former Special Advisor at the Home Office. And, of course, Dennis McShane. Dennis, thank you so much for joining me. Really good to see you. He's the former Labour Minister for Europe. Right, so this is GB News. We're live on TV, online on digital radio. It's fast approaching 35 minutes after 4 o'clock. After the break, we will continue with our Great British Debate. And I'm asking, has the civil service become drunk on power? Now, you'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also GB News presenter Father Calvin Robertson. Then at 5 o'clock, it's this week's Difficult Conversation. Now, Anti-Bullying Week is set to commence on Monday to help shine a spotlight on the issue that is prevalent at all ages. Now, CEO of the charity the Diana Award, which was founded in honour of Princess Diana, will be on the show to talk about how to get involved in the campaign. All that after your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Nana. It's 4:34. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Large groups of migrants have clashed with French police near Dunkirk after the authorities stopped their attempts to cross the Channel. Migrants have been seen attacking French police officers with stones and tree branches. Meanwhile, the force used pepper spray to push them back. GB News has learned the vast majority of migrants are young men, with 1 or 2 women and children. Meanwhile, dozens of Albanian nationals are protesting in central London against the British government's immigration policies. Many are still furious about the Home Secretary's comments earlier this month when she likened the number of asylum seekers arriving in the UK to an invasion. Close to 40,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel in small boats so far this year. Britain and France are expected to agree a deal as soon as Monday to ramp up their joint efforts to reduce the numbers. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace says Russia's retreat from Kherson marked another strategic failure from Moscow as he pledges to continue support for Ukraine. There have been scenes of jubilation across Ukraine after the liberation of the city of Kherson from Russian control. It was the only regional capital city captured by Russian troops since the invasion began in February. Vladimir Putin's spokesperson has denied the move as a defeat, saying the region remains part of Russian territory after it was annexed in September. Tory MPs have come out in defence of the Deputy Prime Minister after he was accused of being rude and aggressive towards civil servants. It's reported that multiple sources have alleged Dominic Raab created a culture of fear in his previous role as Justice Secretary. Labour described the accusations as deeply troubling, saying they raise more questions about Mr Sunak's judgment by appointing him. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television and online, across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
So welcome back. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. If you've just joined me, I'm Nana Akua. Welcome. Now, it is time for our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, has the civil service become drunk on power? The Public and Commercial Services Union has been accused of orchestrating strikes with the aim of overthrowing the government. This comes after their president said that the union's key demand was to get the Conservatives out and usher in a Labour government. Now, they actually said that. That to me is shocking. Not to mention the PCS union, so that's what it stands for, General Secretary, said a mass walkout of civil servants could drive the Tories out of government. Now, there's more likely to be pressure on Rishi Sunak to bring in stronger anti-strike legislation. So what are your thoughts on that? For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, has the civil service become drunk on power? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also GB News presenter Calvin Robinson. Lizzie, I'm going to come to you first of all. So this is the civil servants, supposedly neutral body that will work within whatever government's interest to provide whatever that government needs.
It's funny, you know, requests for money often have a warmer reception when you're doing a good job. Can I just say that? I mean, let's be honest, the state of them. I mean, I waited for a new passport for how long? I was like, is anyone there? Is anyone at home, really? Seriously? And then let's just be honest, we've got 11% inflation. We have the postal workers, we've got the teachers, railway workers, and now we've got barristers, and now we've got the nurses. I mean, really, seriously, are they joking? And I think there's clear, evidence that this is like political vandalism, as unions and example, oil protesters using this economic mess as a leverage to get the government out of office. That's what I really feel.
Well, and this committee, they represent 124 government departments, which include passport officers, you said. I mean, as ever, if you're going to ask for money, at least be doing a decent job. The job centres, which obviously aren't getting many people into work, a lot of people, loads of people not actually in work. It's pretty bad, Calvin.
I'm going to break the habit of a lifetime and actually be moderate on this.
Don't be. Please don't. Don't be.
Because I don't believe in striking, of course. However, and I do think there are a number of civil servants who are big Blairites. However, I think the vast majority of civil servants do hold this country together. And I think the reason they're so fed up with the Conservative government is because it's such a low calibre of politician. And they've gone into office with very little experience in senior ministerial roles. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to get anything done. And the civil service are not being used to their capacity. Things like we just talked about earlier, as in asylum seeker claims, we should be pushing those through one a week, not one a year.
Well, why is that, though? Aren't they the ones doing the job?
No, this is up to the ministers. The ministers only do... the civil servants only do what the ministers tell them to do.
Yes, but the civil servants action it, and I'm sure the ministers are telling them to do it, but somehow it's not happening.
I think...
And
we often think that...
Yeah, but perhaps they're doing it almost slightly deliberately because they don't want the government in power.
There's some of that sometimes,
but
I think the vast majority of it isn't that. The problem is our politicians want to be showboating, they want to be out there making great announcements with some good rhetoric, but they don't want to sit there and do the boring day-to-day job of governing, and that's what they need to get on with.
But they're inept. They're inept.
Yeah,
they're not efficient.
Inept, but the civil service aren't holding them back. They're holding themselves back.
Well, I'm sorry, but the civil servants... No.
They're wanting more money for a disastrous job.
They were the ones saying, they were going to strike because they didn't like Priti Patel's turn-back policy. They didn't want to go along with things like that. They are not... They are the government, but they do what the elected government tells them to do. They do not do what they decide and force the elected government out.
That is true.
And that is the problem that I'm having with them. Yeah. Whether some of them work hard or whether some of them don't, some of them are at home, yeah, OK, they're not doing a great job. If you want more money, you should be doing a good job. But the bottom line is, this is what the person leading this is saying, that they are going to do what they can to get rid of the government, and therefore there may be an element of lethargy, which means they won't do the job they're asked. That can't be acceptable, sure.
No, I think it's abhorrent, but I don't think it's because of party politics. I don't think it's because they want Labour in over the Tories.
Well, that's what they've said.
No, I think they said they want to get Tories out, not to get Labour in. I think the problem
who goes in instead?
Like a lot of us, they see the quality of our government and think actually they're not doing anything. They're not getting anything done, and they are terrible. They are
inept.
They're incompetent. They need to be gone.
Well, they've got a £50
but it's not their
million, black hole at the minute.
At least.
So, is this really correct what they're doing? It isn't. I mean, it's absolutely deplorable. I think we should set up a specialised department of Homeland Security without the CPS and being included so they can't blackmail the government. That's what I think.
Well,
that's not a bad idea, is it? That's
Well, last night the government also said that the Border Force Unit is trying to cause chaos at Christmas and ruin the festive plans of thousands of families just to help their masters in the Labour Party. It's totally unacceptable. Now, that's the premise of this is that actually they are doing things deliberately to ensure that the government do not work efficiently. But that is us that get punished, yet we are paying for them to be there, and we elected the government. They are not. We did not elect the
Yeah, they're making people's lives worse in the best way possible.
In the approach that they're taking is inappropriate, and I think striking should be pretty much outlawed, to be honest with you. I think if someone doesn't want to go to work, we should be able to sack them and hire someone else that does.
Well, I agree with that 100%. But I'm just struggling with the fact that anyone in the civil service feels that they could just...
I know so many,
I find that...
I know so many civil servants, and they are of such higher quality civil contributor than most of our politicians. And our politicians like to use the civil service as a barrier, say, yeah, it's them, they're holding us back. When actually they just don't want to get on with the work. They just don't want to do the job. They just want the applause, and they want to be celebrated as celebrities, and they want to get up on stage and say, yes, we need to stop immigration, but they don't want to be in the office day in, day out making that happen.
Yeah, but you've got to, words are easy, as we know. They need to take action.
Exactly.
But we need to get rid of the European, I keep saying it, judges, to not dictate. This is what we need to do. I'm sorry.
The Act needs to go. The Modern Day Slavery Act needs to go. A lot of this horrible legislation that is actually detrimental all needs to be cleared out.
Tell me, what have the civil servants actually been good at of late? Keeping our borders safe, what have they been good at? They've been absolutely
that's not their job.
disastrous.
It's the ministers. This is my point.
But the ministers don't process the claims and applications. The civil service are the paper pushers, the pen pushers, the ones who are behind it all. So if you go to, say, if I call HMRC, the person responding will be somebody working within the civil service, right? Not the minister or the Home Secretary or somebody.
Yeah.
So ultimately, that work is delegated to the civil servants.
Yeah.
So as they know they have power in that if they don't do the job, then the thing doesn't happen, I feel that they're taking that power into their own hands and deciding which way the government goes. I don't think that's...
And how's their nerve to ask for, I mean, if they were doing a good job, you're rewarded.
But
they're shambolic.
Think about it this way. It's easy for us to see them as the scapegoat, and it's easy for politicians to use them as the scapegoat, and no one can prove otherwise, because the civil service cannot speak out because they have to be politically neutral. Therefore, they are the bad guys.
But they are speaking out.
But we're letting the MPs get away with murder at their cost.
Yeah, but they are speaking out. They are speaking out. The head of this union has said that they're going to get together to try and get rid of the government. That's what they're saying. So
they're not being neutral, are they?
They're not being neutral.
That's true. So get rid of him, get rid of the union.
I don't know, for me, I don't, where I sit with this is that, for me, that's totally unacceptable, right? I elect a government, the government gets in power. Even if it's the government that I don't want, I go along with it because that is the democratic process. But I do not then expect some organisation. It's like you having a job, you want to do something, you tell your producers, can you do this, that and the other, and they do everything in their power not to do the thing you've asked.
Welcome to GBNews.
Push it around. I know, I have this trouble all the time. No, I don't. My producers are fantastic. No, so what I'm saying is that's it. You imagine you're asking for something and people are doing...
People can only work within the brief they're given, though.
Yeah, but if they're doing exactly the opposite deliberately to go against you,
if they're obfuscating, then it's a problem.
That can't be working.
One point is we have to be sure that that's what's happening.
I think they have such a cheek. I can't believe it. I really do, and they do the worst job ever.
OK, so let me just read you the quote then. So Fran Heathcote, the PCS, so the president of this Public and Commercial Services Union, said that the union's key demand, this is in speech marks, was to get this government out. In quote, out quote. Well, that's what it said. That's what it says. That's what's reported in the Telegraph.
To me.
That's not neutral. That's in quotes. I don't think they should be doing that, do you? But this show, as ever, is nothing without you. So let's find our GB News voice. Where should we go? Should we head over to Bristol and talk to one of our regular GB News viewers, Lee Harris? He's a GB News voice. I'm not going to do the animal thing. I usually do. Lee, all right, so what is your view on this particular quote and your view of the civil service?
I'm going to take a much more controversial approach than Calvin, I think. For some time now, to me, it's been obvious that the civil service has been infiltrated by woke, left-wing Remainer activists who are absolutely hell-bent on bringing down the government. And within certain parts of government, like the Home Office, for example, I know this has already been said, but it's been widely reported that there's been literally an ongoing battle with the civil service just to enact government policy. There's been a constant resistance, leaks to the media have been prevalent. Priti Patel had to take the rare step of issuing a ministerial direction, you might remember, just to force the civil service just to work on the Rwanda plan. It's the same for Suella Braverman. The unelected civil service even had the audacity to try and block her reappointment. That doesn't sound very neutral to me. They did it with Brexit, and honestly, that's where a lot of this comes from for me. The civil service were part of the establishment, to me, that were trying to kind of block Brexit, and they still are. You know, the civil service holds a Remain bias, and they've been resistant to Brexit reforms. Jacob Rees-Mogg has said that they have been dragging their feet, for example. I think it seems pretty obvious. But as you said, Nana, this should not be the case. The civil service is supposed to be politically neutral, and they're supposed to enact government policy, nothing more. If they don't like it, they should resign. They knew what the job... yeah, exactly. They knew what the job was when they signed up for it. The fact that we have senior civil... This really made me laugh, although it shouldn't. The fact that senior civil servants in the Ministry of Justice were offered respite and a route out when Dominic Raab was appointed last month just proves what a bunch of pearl-clutching woke wet wipes they are. I say it needs root and branch reform, the civil service. Maybe these strikes would give the government an opportunity just to get rid of them and get a whole new bunch of people in.
Lee Harris, thank you. Thank you so much. Succinct as ever, brilliantly done. Thank you so much. That's Lee Harris. He's our GB News voice. Well, today I've been asking, has the civil service become drunk on power? Let's see what you've been saying. Sarah says they are not drunk on power. They're allowed to strike. It's their right. Yes, but you've slightly missed the point now. The point was that they're actually saying that they want to behave in this manner to get rid of the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, sorry. Michael says, I think striking during such a hard time for the UK is very underhanded. And John says, no, civil servants are not drunk on power. The majority of those voting to strike are not earning big bucks. Listen, I don't disagree with the strikes. I'm just looking at it, and if they're saying they're trying to do it to depose the current government, I'm not up for that. Right, there's a poll up on Twitter throughout the day, throughout the show, asking, has the civil service become drunk on power? And currently, 89% of you say yes, 11% of you say no. Right, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, Royal Roundup time. Royal biographer Angela Levin will be here live. On the menu, all the antics from I'm a Celebrity in the Jungle, where Zara Phillips' husband Mike is a campmate, and rumours from the palace suggest that the royals aren't too pleased with his performance or appearance even after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio.
And online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
If you've just tuned in, where have you been? This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now it's time for our royal roundup because there's always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different. Rumours from the palace suggest that the royal family is not happy with Mike Tindall's appearance on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. And season 5 of The Crown has finally been released. It's the first since the death of Queen Elizabeth II. And every Saturday, as you know, I love to talk about it. So joining me in the studio live is Angela Levin. She's a royal biographer. Angela.
Yes.
Love the blue. Love the blue.
Thank you.
So let's start. So where should we start then? Should we go... Are you watching I'm a Celebrity?
I have watched it on and off, but I don't like it. I don't,
You don't like
it. No, I don't like it to sort of undermine people, to humiliate them. I think it's a great shame. And I don't actually like the pressure that if you don't succeed in something, all the people around you are not going to have enough to eat that evening.
Oh, I think it's hilarious, Angela.
Oh.
That's the fun of it.
No, I don't like it. But I am quite shocked about Mike Tindall.
Really? Why?
Revealing. Well, I think, although he's not a royal, he's a part of the royal family because his wife is, and he fits in very well. But actually, to start telling all sorts of private information, like, you know, when they first met, she liked to get, you know, overdrink and get a bit tipsy or more than a bit. And that the last baby they had, Lucas, their little boy, much longed for after 2 girls, you know, how they put towels in the gym because she was coming very quickly. I really don't.
Really?
Really.
Angela, what did you see when he got the spider and took it out in a lovely way? There was a spider in the little camp thing. Did you not see that? That was lovely.
It's fine with spiders. I'm not scared of spiders.
But it was massive. It's
I
got
do
a
them
face.
all at
This one has a
home. I
face.
take out spiders if they are in my house. I don't worry about spiders. I just think you don't give personal information to everybody about things that are quite private.
I don't know. It's made him seem more human, made him come across nicely. I don't know. I think he...
But you can be human without doing that.
It's a bit tricky, though. You're in the jungle.
Hitting that rock with a great, huge, enormous hammer, that was funny because that's just fun. But I don't think you start telling about your wife if she's a member of the royal family.
So what is it? What of the royal family? Is the royal family, are there any inklings from the palace about what they feel about it?
Well, I'm quite sure his mother-in-law, Princess Anne, doesn't like it one bit because she's very organised and very keen on the sense of duty. And I think that isn't the right way to show that you're dutiful.
Now, another lady who you've written a fabulous book about, Camilla.
Yes.
There's a story about eggs being thrown at her and Charles.
Yes, when they went up north, they had eggs thrown at them. And what was incredibly impressive was how calm they were. And then I realised that in 2010 and 2012, they were surrounded by people around their Rolls Royce and screaming and banging on the window and nearly smashing it. And that was terrifying because they got separated from all their other cars with the protection officers in them. And Charles kept calm. He just sat there very calmly. She was a bit frightened, but when they saw her at the London Palladium afterwards, she said, well, you've got to try everything once. So they're really good eggs, actually, to put it into that.
I like what you did with that, yeah. No, it's just, they do. I mean, I think they're coming off beautifully.
Because I think it is scary. I think it is scary when you're out there, and they must have a lot of trust in the protection officers because there can be some lunatic who's going to throw something much more significant
they have to be very careful.
And I think in this day and age, people are so angry about things that they lose their control, their self-control. So they have to be very careful. But when you see that sort of dignity, I think it's very impressive. I would be scared stiff, actually.
Yeah, I mean, all credit to Camilla and, of course, Charles. They handled themselves with absolute dignity most of the time. I haven't really seen them do anything that would make me think, oh...
Dignity and fun. There was a mischievous eye there nowadays, and I think that's lovely. So you're not just dignified and away from people. You're dignified
aren't they,
and connecting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, what about Netflix, The Crown? The next season is up. I don't watch it. I can't be bothered. I don't like stories of people who are actually alive, but then you're making it up. It's
I don't like it,
pointless.
but I had to watch it. So I watched 8 episodes in one go, which was absolutely exhausting. But I found that I thought the first one and the rest of it was all set out to make King Charles look as nasty as possible. spoilt, unkind, aggressive. I mean, he was trying very, very hard to get his mother off the crown, speaking to the current Prime Minister, John Major, and wanting him to work with him. He has said it's absolute nonsense, it never happened. But I think you could, you know, see this awful man who's so selfish and unkind, but he's not. He's delightful, he's charming, he's got funny ways, so have we all, really. But I thought it was really deliberately nasty. So, and that set the scene as well. And the Queen is sort of presented as someone who's past it and wasn't intelligent and didn't know really what was going on, and full of taking her gloves with her everywhere and her handbag, you know, sort of making a mockery. I don't
How can they get away with that? I don't understand how they can do that.
Well, because they say it's fictional, so you can't attack it. But I, same as you, I don't like to see it people who are still alive. And especially I don't want to see it at the moment when you're still grieving for the Queen. I think it's incredibly unkind and unnecessary.
And very briefly, Harry and Meghan, the latest, is there anything?
Well, yes, Meghan is again breaking all the rules, because when you're a member of the royal family, you don't try and make personal or financial gain. But she's actually wanting her title here, but she also wants to show how good she is in America, tell them all they've got to vote. She had a sticker on her jumper which she showed herself that she has voted, and lots of things from Archwell to tell people what to do and how to do it. But that's Harry's thing as well, and he is a royal member of the royal family and a prince, and he shouldn't be doing that.
Neither of them should be, frankly.
No.
Well, Angela, always a pleasure. Lovely to talk to you.
I
don't know how Meghan isn't exhausted with herself. I'm exhausted hearing all about her. God, if I were, I'd just be like, oh my God, I've had enough. Angela Levin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure. That is Angela Levin. She's a royal biographer. This is GB News. More to come after 5. Good afternoon, I'm Nana Akua. We're live here on GB News, on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion, mine, theirs and, of course, yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Joining me today is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also GB News presenter Father Calvin Robinson. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 1 minute past 5. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. Large groups of migrants have clashed with French police near Dunkirk after the authorities stopped their attempts to cross the channel. Migrants have been seen attacking French police officers with stones and tree branches. Meanwhile, the force used pepper spray to push them back. GB News was told the vast majority of migrants were young men, with 1 or 2 women and children. Meanwhile, dozens of Albanian nationals are protesting in central London against the British government's immigration policies. Many are still furious about the Home Secretary's comments earlier this month when she likened the number of Albanian asylum seekers arriving in the UK to an invasion. Close to 40,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel in small boats so far this year. Britain and France are expected to agree a deal as soon as Monday to ramp up their joint efforts to reduce those numbers. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace says Russia's retreat from the city of Kherson marked what he calls another strategic failure for Moscow as he pledges continued support for Ukraine. There have been scenes of jubilation across Ukraine after the liberation of Kherson from Russian control. It was the only regional capital city captured by Russian troops since the invasion began in February. Vladimir Putin's spokesperson has denied the move as a defeat, saying the region remains part of Russian territory after it was annexed in September. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba says there isn't a single indicator that Russia is sincerely seeking peace talks.
The only response we always received from them, even when we sat down at the table, was, here is the list of ultimatums, take it or leave it. And the set of these ultimatums meant full capitulation and unconditional surrender of Ukraine.
Tory MPs have come out in defence of the Deputy Prime Minister after he was accused of being rude and aggressive towards civil servants. It's reported that multiple sources have alleged Dominic Raab created a culture of fear in his previous role as Justice Secretary. Labour described the accusations as deeply troubling, saying they raise more questions about Mr Sunak's judgment by appointing him. Levelling Up Shadow Minister Alex Norris says bullying shouldn't happen in government.
It's cowards that bully their staff, people who, in that power imbalance, can't really do very much about it and simply have to put up with what we've seen happen. I mean, obviously, we're only reading in the last sort of 24 hours some of the issues relating to the Deputy Prime Minister and what he may or may not have thrown, and it's important that that's given the full airing. But we do know what happened with Gavin Williamson, that's accepted. But fundamentally, I just don't think they should do that, and I don't really think that that should be very controversial.
Essex police say an officer who was injured during Just Stop All protests earlier this week has thanked the public for their support. The crash on the M25 involved 2 lorries as eco-activists blocked traffic on Wednesday. Police say the airbags deployed after the officer was thrown from his motorbike. The officer has asked to remain nameless but is recovering from his injuries. Control of Congress is still undecided in America as ballot counting continues in key states. The Democrats are closer to winning the Senate, with Senator Mark Kelly projected to win Arizona. That would leave Republicans and Democrats with 49 seats each. Nevada and Georgia are yet to be decided. Meanwhile, Republicans are holding a slim lead in the House of Representatives. The women's England rugby team has suffered heartbreak after losing to New Zealand in the World Cup final. England's Red Roses dominated the first half despite one player getting a red card. But their rivals, the Black Ferns, came back strong, scoring a try in the last 9 minutes to give a 34-31 win. There were record numbers of spectators in the stadium, with more than 40,000 tickets sold. Fans say despite the loss, they're still proud of the team.
It could have gone either way for quite a lot of the game, so I think in this room everyone was just really passionate about England women and the Loughborough Lightning girls here, so we're all pretty gutted, but we're also really proud of everyone out there. Like, it's a massive honour for them to represent the Rose and put on a great performance like they did today.
Renowned graffiti artist Banksy has revealed his latest artwork on the side of a damaged building in Ukraine. It shows a female gymnast balancing on her hands on rubble at the bottom of a destroyed building. Murals spotted in and around Kyiv has led to speculation the artist is working in the war-torn country. Another, not yet officially claimed by Banksy, shows the Russian president being flipped during a judo match with a young boy. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Nana Akua.
It is fast approaching 7 minutes after 5 o'clock. Welcome on board. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, Sir Gavin Williamson resigned from the Cabinet this week after claims that whilst he was Defence Secretary, he told a former senior civil servant to slit your throat. I mean, I can safely say I've never told anyone to do this. I mean, who does that? Questions are being asked as to whether Rishi knew about this alleged bullying incident. And The Guardian reported that 2 sources claimed that the Prime Minister had been alerted to Williamson's credible and sustained bad behaviour whilst Defence Secretary when he drew up his cabinet. And one of them said that Sunak was given a general description of the alleged bullying incident at the Ministry of Defence, but gave Williamson the job regardless. However, Gavin claims that he resigned because he said the claims meant that he was becoming a distraction for the government and he wanted to clear his name. But then another incident came to light where he allegedly sent abusive messages to the former Conservative Chief Whip, Wendy Moulton, complaining about not being invited to the Queen's funeral. You've maybe seen some of those messages with the expletives crossed out in some of the newspapers. I mean, you'd think he'd be cleverer than that than to put a message in writing, but in a way, it was good that he did. Then Anne Milton claimed that Gavin used unethical and immoral methods whilst he was in charge of party discipline as a Chief Whip. She told Channel 4, "I think he feels that he's Francis Urquhart from the House of Cards." And others told The Guardian he was spectacularly rude to civil servants who were giving him a presentation. and he's now under investigation for 3 separate claims, 2 by Parliament's Independent Complaints Grievances Services and 1 internal Conservative Party investigation. So after all that, a lot of people calling him a bully. What's your experience of bullying? We'll be talking about that in Difficult Conversations next. So here's what else is coming up today at 5 o'clock. As I mentioned, Difficult Conversations. Anti-Bullying Week is set to commence on Monday to help shine a spotlight on the issue that is prevalent in all ages. Now, bullying often leaves people feeling isolated and lonely, and it can lead to many mental health problems. The CEO of the charity, the Diana Award, which was founded in honour of Princess Diana, will be on the show to talk about the campaign. And then for our Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do you believe we can affect climate change? The annual global carbon budget reveals there is no sign global emissions are decreasing this year. And if the current level persists, it's only 50-50, or heads or tails, that will meet targets set in the Paris Climate Agreement. So I'm asking, do you believe that we can affect climate change? Ambassador of the Conservative Environment Network, Stanley Johnson, will be in the studio. Email me your thoughts as ever, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at gbnews. So it's time for a difficult conversation. Now, bullying has been making the headlines because of the alleged behaviour of certain government ministers, and also an abuse being shared on social media. And it's Anti-Bullying Week from Monday, so we're highlighting how bullying can leave people feeling isolated and lonely. A lot of them suffer with mental health issues afterwards. It can also have knock-on effects in relationships with people's carers and, of course, in their social lives. The Diana Award is a charity that was set up in memory of Princess Diana. And of course, it was based on her belief that young people have the power to change the world around them. Their anti-bullying campaign aims to change attitudes and tackle cultures in which bullying thrives. And I'm pleased to say that the CEO of the Diana Award, Tessie Ojo, joins me now. Tessie, thank you so much for being part of the programme. Now, first of all, tell us briefly about the Diana Awards and the anti-bullying campaign.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me. So the Diana Award, as you rightly said, is a charity legacy to Princess Diana, and our work really focuses on empowering young people to thrive, making sure that we unlock the potential of young people, we create opportunities for young people, and we inspire positive change in the lives of young people. But we know that to unlock the potential, we have to look at the barriers that young people face. And as you said, this is Anti-Bullying Week, and we know that across the UK, almost 8 out of 10 children experience bullying. And if we want children to thrive, then we need to address it. We need to address it both from a preventive point of view, but also for making sure that the school is a safe place for everyone to thrive.
Now, when you talk about bullying, because a lot of people say, oh, well, you know, a lot of the children are wallflowers, they should be able to, you know, toughen up sort of thing. How would you define bullying? Because there are different layers of it. Some would be aggressive, some could be micro-type bullying. What would you define it as?
So bullying is anything that's meant to, firstly, is the repetitive behaviour towards another person. It's something that's meant to always demean another person, but it's not. A lot of the time we hear people say, oh, it's just banter. The truth is, if it's banter and you're not laughing, you're not finding it funny, and it's repeated again and again, then you begin to wonder, what's the intention? You know, a lot of the time we have these conversations, and it's about how it might be funny to you. You might find it funny. Is that person finding it funny? Does it make that person unsafe? Does it make them a target? Beyond just that one conversation, does it then open up the grounds for other people to pick on that person? The thing that we hear again and again for young people is how devastating bullying is. At the start of this academic year, we did a survey. We actually surveyed parents who are in the workplace, and almost half of them told us that the bullying that they experienced at school still had an impact on them. So, you know, we don't want to trivialize it. We don't want to just think, oh, it's part of character building. There are lots of other ways to build character, and definitely bullying is not one of those.
I was going to say, well, I mean, yes, children get bullied, but adults as well. I mean, you see it a lot when people think they can just push you over and kind of bully you in a way. Well, listen, joining me on my panel also is Calvin Robinson and Lizzie Cundy. I'm just going to turn to them. If you wait right there, and Calvin, have you experienced bullying yourself?
Well, when I was a school teacher, I saw that pretty much most kids are bullied at some point, but we have to be careful not to differentiate between types of bullying. Any abuse of a child is bad, and all bullying needs to be stamped out, but sometimes we look at certain types of bullying and treat it differently to other types. And I think that doesn't help children.
Lizzie, what about you? Were you ever bullied at school?
No, I luckily wasn't, but I did see bullying at school, and the sadness was actually I lost my friend to suicide through bullying and didn't feel she could talk to anyone, go to the teachers, and if they... You know, she did try and talk to someone and they were like, oh, you can get over it. Yeah. You know, it's just banter. But when it's repetitive, that's the problem. But I have to say, for me now, I would say on social media, on Twitter, which is like absolute... It's a cesspool, and I was hoping that maybe Musk can do something about that, because it really is upsetting.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it, bullying? I mean, they try and put... Sorry, go on. Yes, Tess, please.
I was going to say that it's really interesting to see that even as adults, we recognise it, and as adults, we all believe that this must stop. But somehow we don't do enough about it. And for me, this is why this campaign is really important, that we teach our children right from primary school about kindness, about respecting. Look, we're never going to be the same. If we were all the same, it would be so boring. Yet we're so frightened by our difference, and that's why people are bullied.
Yeah, there'd be 4 boxes of people who look exactly the same, like 4 of me, that'd be a bit much.
We couldn't handle that.
It'd be too much to be like 4 talking, you'd be like, oh my God. But, I mean, I remember when I was at school, because when I went to school, I was the only black person there, actually, which part of me slightly enjoyed, because I was the centre of attention. But there was a side of it where initially, I remember literally the first day, I was chased around the school playground and they were bullying me. And I remember them saying, just tell us one thing that you can do better than us, one thing. And I said, I can run, and I ran. And after that, they invited me on it. I was the first person picked on every single sports thing, and I managed to turn it around because I was good at something. But often that isn't the case. How can young people get out of it if they're experiencing bullying? In your view, what is the best way for them to handle it?
So this is why we run a program where we educate young people. We give them the tools, firstly about protecting themselves, but also to take responsibility for the well-being of their peers. It's all about being a support. Firstly, we know that bullying thrives when everyone's silent. When you see something and you don't speak out, that empowers the perpetrator. Look, we know that there are reasons why people bully, and I'm not here to defend any bully or what, but it's about if we all speak out, if we empower young people to understand that firstly, this is wrong, speak out. A lot of the time, we are told by young people that even when they experience bullying, they feel embarrassed and they don't want to talk about it because it makes them feel powerless. And that, again, even that's wrong. So our program really seeks to empower young people, firstly, to understand what bullying is and to be able to speak out, never suffer in silence. But secondly, to take responsibility for the well-being of their peers, to look out for each other. That's all we're asking. But in primary school, do we go that step further around really educating young people around respect, around kindness, and particularly this anti-bullying week? We're running, in partnership with Nationwide Building Society, we're running a postbox campaign. And that campaign is something simple. We're getting over 120,000 children across our primary schools to write letters of kindness to each other. To just,
nice.
We want just simple things like saying, hey, Aqua, I love your hair. Something simple like that. It's about validating each other, helping each other understand that there is power in positive affirmations. And if we can build our children to think about positive affirmations, hopefully we're building a culture of safety around our schools.
Well, let's hope we can. Tessie, thank you so much for sharing all that. Really good to talk to you. That's Tessie Ojo. She is the CEO of the Diana Awards. OK, so this is GB News on the way. The Great British Debate this out. I'm asking, do you believe that we can affect climate change? Now, the annual global carbon budget reveals that there is no sign that global emissions are decreasing this year, despite all the things that we're supposedly doing. If the current level persists, there is a 50-50, so it's the toss of a coin, chance that the target set in the Paris Climate Agreement will be met. So I'm asking you, do you actually believe that we can affect the climate? First, though, it's time for a break. We'll be back in a moment.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Good afternoon. This is GB News. If you've just tuned in, where on earth have you been? It's coming up to 21 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. Now, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, do you believe that we can affect climate change? The annual Global Carbon Budget Report was released this week, and it issued a very stark warning about the current state of the climate change. Now, according to the report, there is no sign of a decrease in global emissions this year, and it predicts that they will be 40.6 billion tonnes by December, just shy of the highest annual total on record, 40.9 billion tonnes in 2019. Now, the goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade was set out in the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, but the report warns that its current levels persist. There's a 50% chance that the target will be exceeded in 9 years. Now, this comes in the same week that world leaders, including Rishi Sunak, reaffirmed their commitment to the net zero agenda at COP27 at the summit in Egypt. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do you believe that we can affect climate change? So author, environmental campaigner and ambassador of the Conservative Environment Network, Stanley Johnson, joins me in the studio now. Stanley, thank you so much for coming in. It's good to see you.
Well, I'm absolutely thrilled you're taking this point today. I mean, and this report, which you've just referred to, Nana, is so extremely important because the idea it is getting across is that there's a global carbon budget out there. You know, it is 40 billion gigatons a year. And if we don't keep to that, actually, we've got to shave that down year after year. We run out of steam by 2030, you know, so it's absolutely vital.
But this is all kind of based on modelling, isn't it? So we do these modelling stuff. Don't we have to be careful that our modelling is actually correct? Because a lot of the modelling, so for example, the modelling during the pandemic, we got that completely wrong. And it was so way off the mark. Don't we have to be careful that our modelling, because the outcome that we're predicting using our current modelling...
Well, you've got 100 top scientists out there behind this report, and one thing is not modelling, which is actually measuring the increase in the presence of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. That is an absolute fact. I mean, I think we're on about 418 ppm, and the pre-industrial level was half that. So that is a fact. Now, it's the implications of that, which of course does require modelling. Right. And I think they've pretty much got it right. You see it. I travel around the world the whole time, and you can just see the effects of it: the floods, the drought, the melting of the glaciers, the destruction of the rainforest. I first went to the Amazon, would you believe it, in 1959, and it was twice the size as it was then. I travelled around the Amazon, even in Brasilia and Manaus when they were building it.
But that to me is like environmental damage. So I understand, but that's the damage that we're doing to the environment. That's
No, because at least 3.9 billion of those tons you're looking for, these gigatons, that is coming from the forest destruction as well. Do you see what I mean? So you've got to deal with that.
But things like that, I absolutely agree with that we shouldn't be destroying the forest and things like that.
Yeah.
But I kind of look at it and think that, OK, that's a side to the actual issue of CO2 being emitted by the things that we are producing. So, for example, yes, we shouldn't absolutely knock down the forest. That is wrong. I think everyone would agree with that. But with regard to the strategy that we're following in terms of CO2 and going electrified with things, and it doesn't seem to be, we're not making much of an impact.
Well, I thought that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's statement in Parliament a couple of days ago, I think it was on November the 9th, he did set out, fairly clear position as far as the UK government is concerned, that we do have a legally binding target about reaching net zero by, I think, the year 2050. We have some legally binding targets about the restoration of nature. So, and we are, by the way, putting in money now to help the developing countries adapt to this. It's quite a chunk of money. I have a feeling it's like about £11 billion. But of course, the crucial thing, and that's what they're talking about in Sharm el-Sheikh at the moment, the crucial thing is to get much more money on the table. And the irony is that we had COVID. This country alone produced, would you believe it, £400 billion to deal with COVID. Well, the whole of the climate change deal, which was agreed way back in 2009, said we actually only need £100 billion. It's much more now, of course. So the money is there, but what is lacking, I've got to say, is the political will.
Well, I hear you, but the political will may be lacking. All we have to do is really follow what we did in COVID. Everybody stays at home. Nobody tries anything. There was literally, the sky was clear.
Well, you're right.
It was fine.
You're perfectly right. In the year 2020, there was a fall-off in the emissions. That is absolutely true. I'm afraid we've caught that up again now.
Of course we have, yeah.
We've caught it up.
OK, well, let's stay right there, Stanley, because I want to bring on Lois Perry. She's director of CAR26, which takes a very sceptical view on the climate change science. Lois, so good to talk to you. Lois, right, you heard what Stanley said. What is your view on this? Should we be worried by the findings of this particular report?
Well, no, not at all, because, as you know, I don't believe, and hundreds, if not thousands of scientists don't believe that CO2 has any detrimental impact on climate change whatsoever. And in fact, a recent poll that Toby Young reported showed that 41% of top climate scientists didn't think there was any such thing as man-made catastrophic climate change. But I'm quite interested to hear where Stanley Johnson thinks the money will come from to pay all these subsidies and all these billions of pounds that are required, because the net zero policies that he supports actually will lead to the annihilation of industry and no one will be paying taxes. So it's only if he's advocating some sort of form of communism or something like that, that actually the money could come in to pay for all these ridiculous things. Net zero means net zero growth. It means no it's anti-capitalist. The whole thing is completely ridiculous. And Rishi Sunak, what he needs to do in his budget, he needs to scrap all of the net zero policies, and actually we might see some growth. We might actually see a capitalist society working properly. And it's interesting because the only people that are benefiting at the moment from our deindustrialization, which is, by the way, why our CO2 emissions have gone down in this country, is China. And I believe that Stanley Johnson has some links to China.
Well, hold on a sec. No, that's not fair. That's not fair. Let's come back to the point, though. Stanley, Lois has made some points with regard to CO2 that it doesn't actually appear to be affecting the climate. Where do you go with that?
I don't want to get into that scientific argument because we've had something called the IPCC for about 20 years now, and it has been pretty...
The IPCC doesn't back up...
Sorry, hold on, Lois. Let Charlie finish. Let Stanley finish.
I'm parking the scientific debate because, much as I respect Lois, I don't think it stacks up against 15 or 20 years of IPCC reports. But on the point you make about the economic effects, I'd say the thing is entirely different because it's the clean growth, the clean energy, the carbon zero approaches, which is going to result in sustainable growth, and it'll give you all the money you're looking for. I mean, that is the point here.
It's a scam. It's heavily subsidised. It's a complete scam. The wind doesn't blow all the time. The sun doesn't shine. The only way that I would support what you're saying is if we went to some sort of nuclear at some point. But actually, that's not... We need to have oil and gas until we could get to that point. And even then, electricity isn't very good for running cars. For a start, there's not enough minerals in the world to make all the electric cars to replace all the ICE vehicles, and it's not efficient in heating your home as well. So I completely disagree. And it's interesting that you're saying this, because you must actually know the truth. So that's
but hold on, Lois. But there are. But hold on. Yeah, but there are.
I read the reports.
But there are other views.
You don't read the reports, because the IPCC report showed that there's no more catastrophic weather events than there's ever been. And in actual fact, they don't actually use the words catastrophic climate change in the IPCC report from last year. In fact, the only reference to that was when they were actually talking about the media coverage.
One second, Lois. I want to give Stanley a chance to speak, because I really want us to have a really sort of balanced debate. So, Stanley, I mean, Lois, I know we're not going to go on to the scientific argument, because, frankly, I'm not a scientist and neither is Stanley, so we'll park that to one side. But we're kind of looking at the things that we're going through at the moment with regard to climate, with regard to affecting the climate. And, you know, what do you think, Stanley, that we should really be doing then? Because, obviously, what we're doing now hasn't made much difference.
Well, you can divvy it up into sectors. You can say there's the energy sector, the transport sector, there's the food sector, there's the chemical sector, and it is possible to achieve significant reductions in all those sectors. Now, of course, you have to do that also on a global basis, and you have to recognise that the UK's contribution has to be weighed against all the others. You have to think of the trade implications of the measures you're taking, but it is absolutely doable, and we are set on the right course. And by the way, picking up Lois's point about nuclear, we have, as you know, just as we've made some more commitments to nuclear, and I think I suspect you're right to assume that we do also need to go down the nuclear route. Bear in mind that that's not going to, as we're produce an output until maybe 2040, 2050, something like that. So, but this debate is going to go on way beyond 2040. That is the point. So that we have to do all kinds of things now, and the main thing to do is to deal with this carbon budget. I come back to the beginning of the thing. Look at the figures. We know we've got 360 gigatons of carbon we can, as it were, emit before we reach the danger level of not being able to get to the
more
1.5.
CO2, the better.
That's it. So we've got the carbon budget, and we know we've got to get there. So it actually means that countries need to divvy up this carbon budget between them, and then they need to divvy up the sectors, and then they need to have the measures which deal sector by sector with getting the. And if that means actually some of us are told, well, you can't go on a plane, that's fine. That's part of the national plan.
Lois.
Yeah, well, you know, some of these things that have been brought in that are apparently more green, for example, the Drax power plant. So rather than have our own energy, our own homegrown energy, we've given £6 billion in subsidies to Drax, 893 million last year alone. And what exactly is green about bringing wood pellets over, which is, you know, actually in effect young pieces of coal, very young, over from Canada on ships that are powered by diesel and burning them in our power plants over here when we're not using our own homegrown energy? How is that more green? And there's not enough minerals in the world.
Hang on, wait. You asked the question. Let Stanley respond.
I might tend to agree with you on the Drax point. I mean, the point I'm making is actually there are things which we can reasonably do in this country. I don't think importing huge amounts of wood pellets from Canada is a sensible way of going. But there are other sensible ways. And the other thing is we don't actually have to devote have our own energy resources 100%. We never have. We don't have our own food resources 100%. Happily, we have clever people in the City of London who make a lot of money.
That's completely untrue. We were a net exporter of energy until pretty recently, actually. We were actually exporting energy. We weren't importing hardly any energy at all.
Well, that's because we have the North Sea.
Been self-sufficient. We have been self-sufficient in the past. And we could be again if we were allowed to frack. But of course, if we're allowed to frack, then we don't have to be dependent on other countries like China and other countries like that. And there seems to be some sort of plan that we're deindustrialised and everything is made over there, including the mad, stupid wind turbine things and the solar panels that are extremely polluting and bad for the environment.
Well, listen, Lois, thank you so much for your thoughts. I want to good to talk to you, Lois. That's Lois Parrish, who's director of CAR 26. Right, I'm going to come back to you, Stanley, for the final word. So your thoughts on that? Because, I mean, if we park the CO2 argument...
My thoughts on this is you've got to have, in a way, an economist's approach. There's no prima facie reason why this country should be self-sufficient in energy production. The terms of trade may be such, or the comparative advantage may be such that other things we can do better. Yes, we had a good couple of decades with North Sea oil. Now we haven't got it, but there are other things we can do. We've got all our brains, the export which comes from the City of London, the technology sector. It's all there. The same thing for food. It's complete nonsense to say we need to be self-sufficient in food production and have sheep and cows going all over our landscape. No, we don't have to do that. It's the economics is going to dictate where we have to go. But the point is these economics have to be based on a sort of sustainable growth concept.
OK, Stanley, it's so good to talk to you. It's fascinating. Well, let's hope we can get it right for the climate and, of course, for ourselves. That, of course, was Stanley Johnson. Lois Perry spoke to us earlier as well. Stanley is a former MEP and environmentalist. Well, let's see what you've been saying. Let's have a quick look. Alan says no. Look properly at the scientific data. So whether we can affect climate change, that is what I asked. Keith says we affected the ozone, and the science for global warming has been known since 1890. So now we have to do something about it. Frank says nothing we can do to alter it. We can be a lot cleaner for the environment, but affecting the weather is beyond us. To be fair, predicting the weather is often beyond us as well. You always get that wrong. If you just join me, it's coming up to 35 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. We'll continue our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, do you believe that we can affect climate change? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also GB News presenter Father Calvin Robinson. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Nana. 5:34. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Large groups of migrants have clashed with French police near Dunkirk after the authorities stopped their attempts to cross the Channel. Migrants have been seen attacking French police officers with stones and tree branches. Meanwhile, the force used pepper spray to push them back. GB News has learned the vast majority of migrants are young men, with 1 or 2 women and children. Meanwhile, dozens of Albanian nationals are protesting in central London against the British government's immigration policies. Many are still furious about the Home Secretary's comments earlier this month when she likened the number of asylum seekers arriving in the UK to an invasion. Close to 40,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel in small boats so far this year. Britain and France are expected to agree a deal as soon as Monday to ramp up their joint efforts to reduce those numbers. The Defence Secretary Ben Wallace says Russia's retreat from Kherson marked another strategic failure from Moscow as he pledges continued support for Ukraine. There have been scenes of jubilation across Ukraine after the liberation of the city of Kherson from Russian control. It was the only regional capital city captured by Russian troops since the invasion began in February. Vladimir Putin's spokesperson has denied the move is a defeat, saying the region remains part of Russian territory after it was annexed in September. And Tory MPs have come out in defence of the Deputy Prime Minister after he was accused of being rude and aggressive towards civil servants. It's reported that multiple sources have alleged Dominic Raab created a culture of fear in his previous role as Justice Secretary. Labour described the accusations as deeply troubling, saying they raise more questions about Mr Sunak's judgment by appointing him. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 39 minutes after 5 o'clock. You're live here on GB News. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time for our Great British Debate This Hour. I'm asking, do you believe that we can affect climate change? Now, the annual Global Carbon Budget Report has issued very stark warnings about the current state of climate change. And according to the report, there is no sign of a decrease in global emissions this year. And it predicts that they will be a 40.6 billion tonnes by December, just shy of the highest annual total on record, 40.9 billion tonnes in 2019. Now, the goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade was set out in the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, but the report warns that if current levels persist, there's a 50% chance that the target will be exceeded in 9 years. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do you believe that we can affect climate change? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined now by Calvin Robertson and also Lizzie Cundy. Lizzie, OK, what do you think? Do you think we can affect it?
Yeah, Nana, look, we can all. I think we all should do our bit. We all want to breathe in cleaner air and have a healthier planet. But let's be serious. I think our efforts shouldn't be into net zero. Our efforts should be looking at countries like China, USA, India, and as a fact, in 8 years, China's carbon emissions have gone into the atmosphere so much more than the UK since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Did you know that as a fact? So I think we should be putting more effort into the other countries because it's pointless. We've got 1% here in the UK.
But you say that, but that is because we offset our stuff. So, for example, we import loads of stuff from China, massive amounts. And in order for them to provide us with those things, they will use their coal-fired power stations and slave labour and some things, as we know already, with many of the products and things that we get from them. And we're able to buy them at very cheap costs, which we're very happy with. And then afterwards, we then say, we only give off 1% of carbon, which isn't quite true. I'm not teasing you, but I'm saying we say that. But the reality is it's a lot more.
But if you put them all together, not just China, USA, India, that's nearly over 60% of the problem.
I agree.
And there's Joe Biden, I'm sorry, flying into COP27 in his jet.
Could be 72.
And, you know, he was lucky he was able to walk forward down that. He worried me because he's a bit fragile these days. But, I mean, why? I mean, why? As I said before, why didn't they just do it? He could have done it on a big Zoom screen. Would it made a real difference? I mean, they're wanting to, you know, save the planet, and then they're all flying in jets. It's so hypocritical.
This is nonsense. Calvin, your thoughts?
It's all a big money-making scam.
Do you think?
Absolutely. But you know what I'm really fed up with? I'm fed up with these young, metropolitan, middle-class girls, mostly, ranting at people saying, this is my future. It's like...
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
First of all, it's all of our future as a people, but also, we're not going to die tomorrow. You know, all of us have a future that we want to protect. It's the arrogance of them thinking it's just their life, their particular individual futures that's important. It's our kids, it's our grandkids, etc. It's everyone that's important, not just them. They're entitled little brats, and they're part of these cults. Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion, Animal Rebellion, what's the other one? Insulate Britain. They're all, what they are is doomsday cults. They think the world is going to end tomorrow unless we do something really radical and extreme. That's why they're getting worse and worse. And eventually,
but why are they getting worse and worse? Because are they getting brainwashed?
They were getting brainwashed, mostly by this guy called Roger Hallam, who's founded all of these organisations that people think they're individual organisations. They're all part of one umbrella scheme, and we need to look into who's funding them, because they got £10 million donated recently, which is very sketchy. And he's grooming these young people and making them think that the world's going to end, and that is a cult. That is exactly what's going on.
Well, some people might say that actually these people are actually coming to him because they have that belief and that system.
They're vulnerable young people.
Yes, but you can bring a horse to water.
And they get more and more extreme. Someone's going to end up dying.
But what I'm saying is that
doing.
you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I mean, these people, a lot of these young people...
You can't blame the
Hold
groom.
on. I'm not saying that. I haven't actually finished what I am saying.
Go on then.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
I'll let you
Nice
speak.
of you. That's good of you. Thank you, Calvin.
I'm feeling charitable.
That's so good. I'm so thankful. Calvin is lovely, isn't he? Father, thank you so much. OK, so what I'm saying is, yes, I do agree that there will be a level of persuasion and almost cult-like mentality when you're in, but ultimately these people are finding these gangs. Not all these people are being groomed in that manner. Some of them are actually going there and believing this. There were groups like this that existed before. Just Stop Oil and all the others have come along.
Al Gore.
I'm not saying that I go along with it. What I'm saying is that I'm not absolving all of the responsibility of this from these young people because they are culpable as well. But I don't agree with the way they're going about it. I don't agree with the whole Just Stop Oil, the way they are carrying on with this protest. I do agree with some of their goals, but I don't know why people have gone so crazy about it.
Well, it's not just... I mean, it's bigger than just Stop Oil and all these extremist groups. These young people are being indoctrinated from school age. It's in the curriculum. It's not even just in PSHE. It's in every single subject that they're talking about this climate emergency. So they're being indoctrinated from day one. Of course, they're going to come out of school, impressionable young people thinking, well, I've got to do my bit to save the planet. Of course they do.
But we've been doing it for a long time, though, to young people. We've been saying, oh, well, make sure you do this. What about your carbon? It's not just those things. There's a whole energy about it. Net zero. There's this. There's that. We are all being indoctrinated with it, Liz.
But why are we getting this at the emergency time? And I said, she just now about Al Gore, who gave there's all these times when it was all going to be over for us all. And I'm sorry, these protesters sticking their hands to the motorway and all that they've been doing, it doesn't win sympathy. In fact, I think it closes people's ears off to it because it's messing with everyone's day-to-day life.
Right. Yeah. But I think it's unscientific. What I'm sick of hearing is people talk about consensus. All the scientists agree on this. Well, that's not how science works anyway. Yeah. And there's always a debate, and the consensus doesn't mean that it's fact. But also, Olympics in the green room, he did a very good presentation on this, in that if you look into the research where we saw that most of the scientists agree on this matter, actually most scientists don't agree. Most scientists didn't disagree with the issue. And that's a conflation of truth. So they're very tricky with the wording, and not many people look at the stats, and everyone just goes, yes, the science, follow the science. It's the same with the COVID.
But where have they got with it? Where have we got with it? Because we know better. COP27 is, happening. What's happened with all the other COPs from the last COP26? What have they done?
They've copped
apart
out.
from just
cop out.
Cop out. Yeah, exactly. Cop out.
I mean, there should be exactly what I call it. COP27. They've had 27 of them. That should be the clue here. And I never heard about the other 25. But I only heard 26 and 27. And also, I mean, Gordon Brown, didn't he say, oh, we've got 50 days, or was it 90 days to save the world and all this thing? I mean, we've been having this whole sort of chicken lick in the skies falling down for years and years and years. And sometimes it's bad and sometimes it's not. What I want to know is the things that they've put together, are they making a difference? And it seems to me that they're not.
No, they are. You know what they are?
They're not making a difference.
They're getting a nice jolly. They're having private flights to wherever COP is hosted this year, each year. They're having all these fancy three-course meals that cost hundreds of pounds. They're networking, having fun with each other. Of course they're getting something out of it. We're not getting anything out of it.
High cost of living, and it's £2,000 a night to stay there. And as Calvin said, which is very true, people are making a lot of money out of it.
The lobbyists that are there are the ones who make money from solar power, from wind power. It doesn't have to be efficient, but it does make sure that they make money.
So do you believe that we can affect climate change?
No.
Calvin? No.
It's a scam.
They don't think it is. They think it's a scam. Well, let's see what you think. Let's welcome our great British voices on. Their opportunity to tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing today. I've got 4. Right, let's start with you. Jonathan Jones in Cornwall. Jonathan, do you believe? What do you think? What's your view?
Nana, I think we can have some effect. I think we should respect the environment and love it. But, we haven't even got any knowledge of how many trees there are growing out there. So, how can we have a civilised debate and discuss anything without real numbers? So, there's practical things we can all do. If we plant trees in cities, temperatures come down a little bit, and that's a fact. But, we need to get out there and count every tree on Earth. That would be 30 trees per person to get to 3 trillion. That's why I set up a little app called Tree Map to do just that. And we need to get down to basics. Nana, that's what we need to do.
Yeah, I love it. And always with a nice cup of tea as well, Tregosan tea as it is. Right, let's go to Gareth. Gareth Wynne-Jones, who's actually from Snowdonia. Gareth, what's your view on this?
Well, here we go again, planting trees, but make sure you plant the tree in the right place, and it's about hedges and edges, so I'll disagree with him on that. But to be totally honest with you, you know, my family's been on this farm 375 years. Okay? Think about that, Nana. Yeah. And 6,000 years ago, they were digging this land to take stones out to make axe heads. That's the history that's on my farm where I live. And above my house is an ancient Celtic hill fort. This is what we're talking about, okay? This is history. But in that time, it was mid-Mediterranean weather. It was a lot warmer here. It was coppices and a lot less people. London was a massive marsh where you are now. You'd have been halfway underwater and there would have been flora and fauna and wildlife everywhere. But we've moved on, okay? So take a little look at what happened during lockdown. Take a little look. Everything came down. Every single one of us are buying on Amazon, from China, from the USA. We want things today, tomorrow, and it's a throwaway society. We need seasonal food. We need to start addressing what we're buying and throwing away every single day, Nana. Because as a farmer that's coming to the autumn of his life as 55, I feel frustrated for my children. And I've been planting trees this year, and I've planted 40 trees on this farm, and they've all been fruit trees, because they're going to feed my grandchildren. And that's what my forefathers did. We need to address this. We need to start to think about what we're doing every single day when we click and collect, when we order online. Bring it in.
Yeah, I hear you. We need to take a look at what we're doing. Thank you so much for that. Lee Webb, you're there in Bedford. Lee.
You know, we can look after the environment a hell of a lot better than what we do at the moment. No doubt about it. We can do recycling, cleaner engines, develop cleaner engines, etc. Absolutely. But affect the climate, I'm not too... You know, I don't like the science there. I don't agree with a lot of the science. Well, you've got to remember, over the past 2 years, the scientists were wrong on COVID and they were wrong on vaccines, etc. With the transmission of vaccines, how many people would die on COVID? They had it into the millions, some of these scientists did. And how long we'd need to be locked down for? They got it wrong. And we're expected to believe them what the sea temperature and the atmospheric temperature and the sea levels will be in about 100 years' time. They can't get it right in about 2 or 3 months' time. What COVID was doing.
Well, they can't predict the weather, Lee, so good luck with that. And Seshni, over to you. You've got about 30 seconds. What do you think? Seshni and Milton Keynes.
Good evening, Nana. Thank you for having me on. Yes, I do believe that we can make a change with climate change. We do need to do it, and we all have a responsibility. We had 194 leaders meet at the COP at Sharm el-Sheikh to do it, and we also have that duty to work together with the leaders. We can do it in our homes by reducing the number of plastic, looking at our insulation in our home, looking at the foods that we eat. We've heard from the farmer, I agree with him, thinking about the future, thinking about our children and the planet that we're going to leave them with. We do need to address the global warming crisis.
OK, thank you so much to all of you. Thank you so much for your thoughts. There's Jonathan Jones in Cornwall, Lee Webb in Bedford, Seshni in Milton Keynes. And who have I missed out? Oh, Gareth Wynne-Jones with a fabulous farm. What a wonderful story. Lovely to talk to you. Lovely to talk to you all. So today I've been asking you, do you believe we can affect climate change? Lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Elizabeth says, I believe the whole climate change is a scam. We shouldn't waste our money fighting it. Stephen says, net zero is a scientific impossibility, nor is it desirable. Loads of you getting in touch. Right, should we do another story? Should we go straight to the quiz? Yes, we'll do a quick one then. This one caught my eye. Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has told Rishi that she intends to press ahead with another independence referendum, with or without the UK government's agreement or not. Let's see what my panel think of that. Calvin and Lizzie, very briefly, we've got about 10 seconds on each.
Oh, good luck, Jimmy Cranky. All the best. That's all I got to say on that one.
And Calvin?
It's not going to happen.
No.
It's all rhetoric.
Well, I don't know. She's going to keep going until she gets it. That's all she's after. Right, let's do it. It's a quick fire quiz. That's the part of the show where I test my panel, some of the other stories that are hitting the headlines right now. Let's hear your buzzers, Lizzie. Calvin. Right, do not press until I finish the question. If you do, you will be exterminated. Question number one. Data has revealed that high street shops are outsourcing a large percentage of printing of Christmas cards. To which country? Is it A, Italy, B, Australia, or C, China? Lizzie?
China.
She says China. What do you think?
I was going to go China as well.
You're going to go China? Of course, it's China. Sorry. Yes,
Donald Trump.
Yeah, critics have hit out at the shops and have accused them of hypocrisy as they outsource a lot of their printing to a country like China. What do you think?
Stop it. We need to stop outsourcing stuff to China.
That's what Gareth is saying, actually, isn't it? Question 2. Which famous chef is charging £675 for a New Year's meal? Is it Gordon Ramsay, B, Heston Blumenthal, or C, Jamie Oliver? Lizzie? A. Who's
Ramsay.
That? Ramsay. What do you think?
C, Jamie Oliver.
You think Jamie needs the money, doesn't he? No, it's Gordon. Gordon Ramsay, the world-renowned chef, has picked the price tag of the whopping £675 for a New Year's meal at the Michelin-starred restaurant. So what do you do? What are you doing for New Year's?
I don't know, I might come to yours. Not sure yet, darling.
I think I'm having a party at my church.
Oh, that's
nice.
Oh, that's lovely. Will they be drinking or no alcohol?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, there's alcohol, we're coming.
You're both welcome.
We're there.
I was going to say, if it's dry, forget it. Right, now, question 3. Matt Hancock has been in the jungle for a week now. What animal part did he have to eat for last night's bush chucker trial? Was it A, a sheep's private parts, B, a camel's private parts, or C, both? Lizzie?
I'm going for both.
You're going for both. Calvin, what would you go for? It is both, by the way.
Both.
Yeah.
Can I say?
It's a quick
I'm not watching, and I don't think people...
Do you know what they're saying now? I'm a celebrity. Keep him in there, please.
He's loving it. He's loving it. His narcissistic tendencies will enjoy the fact that he's centre of attention. Current MP Matt Hancock has said to eat both. He's voted to do it again. Tonight's bush chucker trial alongside Hollyoaks actor Owen Warner. Grossest thing you've ever eaten? Actually, don't answer that. Question 4. The England's rugby football team lost the World Cup earlier this morning, but how many points did they lose by? Closest answer wins. Lizzie?
21.
22.
22.
Oh.
It's 3, actually. Lizzie.
Oh, it's hands down.
The final score 34 to New Zealand, 31 to England. First female football team won the Euros, and now the women have made the Rugby World Cup final. OK, question 5, finally. A man parked his rental car on a road in Surrey, returning just 15 minutes later to a nasty surprise. But what was it? Was it A, the sofa had fallen onto it, B, the car has been spray-painted pink, or C, the car had completely been stripped from the inside? Calvin?
B.
You think it was B?
I'm going for C.
You're going for C? It's A, actually. You're both wrong.
How did the sofa fall?
The sofa had fallen onto it, and the man named Herbert was shocked to discover that the giant sofa now adorned his windshield, seemingly having appeared out of nowhere. He said, I have no word to this incident. I feel lucky. Police investigating the matter have suggested the sofa may have been hurled from a nearby balcony during a party.
Wow.
Have you ever had anything like that fall onto your car?
No. I have to say no, but I have had a deer once just come out at me out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But a sofa.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's bizarre.
You don't drive, probably.
He's one lucky man.
He is lucky. He is lucky. Well, listen, on today's show, I've been asking, has the civil service become drunk on power? And according to our Twitter poll, 90% of you say yes, 10% of you say no. Huge thank you to my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also GB News presenter, Father Calvin Robinson, whose show is tomorrow. Don't forget to tune in at 3 o'clock. And thank you, as ever, to you at home for your company. I'll be back tomorrow at 4 with consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, also former Liberal Democrat MP, let me know, Pip, so for the time. He'll also be joined...
that picture? That's so rude.
Well, he was like that in the green room.
I know. We'll also be joined by the chaser, Sean Wallace. You do not want to miss that. That's all after this, the weather forecast. I'll see you tomorrow at 4. Take care.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry for most, with some cloud in the far east and west. Let's take a look at the details. A dry but cloudy evening for most of southwest England, with low cloud and perhaps fog possible over the hills. Clearer spells at times and breezy, particularly at the coasts. Cloudy for some in southeast England, with light winds allowing some mist and fog to develop under any clearer spells, particularly in the east. Wales will see a cloudy evening on Saturday, with some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle possible over the hills, breezy at western coasts. Staying dry across the Midlands, with plenty of clear skies in the evening and overnight, a little breezy at times but feeling mild with temperatures around 13 Celsius. North East England will see a cloudy evening, although some clearer spells at times. Some low cloud, mist and fog possible, particularly at eastern coast. Light winds and temperatures of 11 or 12 Celsius. Staying dry across most of Scotland with some patchy cloud in places, although outbreaks of light rain and drizzle possible in the far west. Generally light winds but breezy in the west. A cloudy evening across Northern Ireland with some patchy mist and fog, although a few clearer spells possible in the east. Feeling breezy, particularly at the coasts and over high ground. Staying dry for most, although patchy rain and drizzle in the east, some clearer spells and breezy in the west. And that's how it's shaping up overnight.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Always excited.
Good.
Because we just didn't, it's just not enough.
On radio. Tonight on the show, it's Remembrance Sunday, tomorrow, and we'll be talking about the ongoing significance of that always poignant day in the calendar. Our Great Britain will be a busy man tomorrow morning. He's one of the taxi drivers who will be driving veterans to those Remembrance Day commemorations without charging any fares. The Labour Party has revived the idea of introducing ID cards should they come into power. I'll have 2 guests on the show to debate whether that's a good idea. Plus the latest from the US on the midterm elections, advice from financial expert Mr Moneyjar, and plenty from my wonderful panellists Dr Lisa Mackenzie and Lembit Opik. But first, an update on the news from Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you, Neil. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Large groups of migrants have clashed with French police near Dunkirk after the authorities stopped their attempts to cross the channel. Migrants have been seen attacking French police officers with stones and tree branches. Meanwhile, the force used pepper spray to push them back. GB News was told the vast majority of migrants were young men, with 1 or 2 women and children. Meanwhile, dozens of Albanian nationals are protesting in central London today against the British government's immigration policies. Many are still furious about the Home Secretary's comments earlier this month when she likened the number of asylum seekers arriving in the UK to an invasion. Close to 40,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel in small boats so far this year. Britain and France are expected to agree a deal as soon as Monday to ramp up their joint efforts to reduce those numbers. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace says Russia's retreat from the city of Kherson marked what he calls another strategic failure for Moscow as he pledges continued support for Ukraine. There have been scenes of jubilation across Ukraine after the liberation of Kherson from Russian control. It was the only regional capital city captured by Russian troops since the invasion began in February. Vladimir Putin's spokesperson has denied the move as a defeat, saying the region remains part of Russian territory after it was annexed in September. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba says there isn't a single indicator that Russia's sincerely seeking peace talks.
The only response we always received from them, even when we sat down at the table, was, here is the list of ultimatums, take it or leave it. And the set of these ultimatums meant full capitulation and unconditional surrender of Ukraine.
Tory MPs have come out in defence of the Deputy Prime Minister after he was accused of being rude and aggressive towards civil servants. It's reported that multiple sources have alleged Dominic Raab created a culture of fear in his previous role as Justice Secretary. Labour described those accusations as deeply troubling, saying they raise more questions about Mr Sunak's judgment by appointing him. Levelling Up Shadow Minister Alex Norris says bullying shouldn't happen in government.
Cowards that bully their staff, people who, in that power imbalance, can't really do very much about it and simply have to put up with what we've seen happen. I mean, obviously, we're only reading in the last sort of 24 hours some of the issues relating to the Deputy Prime Minister and what he may or may not have thrown, and it's important that that's given the full airing. But we do know what happened with Gavin Williamson, that's accepted. But fundamentally, I just don't think they should do that, and I don't really think that that should be very controversial.
Essex police say an officer who was injured during Just Stop Oil protests earlier this week has thanked the public for their support. The crash on the M25 involved 2 lorries as eco-activists blocked traffic on Wednesday. Police say the airbags deployed after the officer was thrown from his motorbike. The officer, who's asked to be remained nameless, is recovering from his injuries. Control of Congress is still undecided in America as ballot counting continues in key states. The Democrats are closer to winning the Senate, with Senator Mark Kelly projected to win Arizona. That would leave Republicans and Democrats with 49 seats each. Nevada and Georgia are yet to be decided. Meanwhile, Republicans are holding a slim lead in the House of Representatives. The women's England rugby team have suffered heartbreak after losing to New Zealand in the World Cup final. England's Red Roses dominated the first half despite one player getting a red card. But their rivals, the Black Ferns, come back strong, scoring a try in the last 9 minutes of the game to give a 34-31 win. There were record numbers of spectators in the stadium, with more than 40,000 tickets sold. Fans say, despite that loss, they're still proud of the team.
It could have gone either way for quite a lot of the game, so I think in this room everyone was just really passionate about England women and the love for Lightning Girls here, so we're all pretty gutted, but we're also really proud of everyone out there. Like, it's a massive honour for them to represent the Rose and put on a great performance like they did today.
Renowned graffiti artist Banksy has revealed his latest artwork on the side of a damaged building in Ukraine. It shows a female gymnast balancing on her hands on rubble at the bottom of a destroyed building. Murals spotted in and around Kyiv has led to speculation the artist is working in the war-torn country. Another, not yet officially claimed by Banksy, shows the Russian president being flipped during a judo match with a young boy. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Neil Oliver Live.
Thanks, Tatiana. Now, does Britain still exist? Or is it being dismantled to make way for something else? Obviously, there are some square miles of dry land off the coast of mainland Europe still going by the name of Britain. Britain is still on the map. As a for instance, if you pay a people smuggler some thousands of bucks and say, take me to Britain, he will know where you mean and will transport you to a rendezvous with a British Border Force vessel or an RNLI lifeboat financed by donations from the British public, and either will cheerfully ferry you to the British coast, where you will be collected and taken to a fine hotel and given food, money and access to all the facilities a person might need, all of it paid for by taxes from those same British people. Millions of British people who are themselves painfully short of money and struggling to feed themselves and heat their homes. Those taxes are predicted to rise so that more of our money might be flushed out of Britain, away from the British, towards those deemed more deserving. But does that name, Britain, still define a sovereign country in any meaningful sense? The crisis on the south coast is only part of a bigger problem. These islands of ours offer free accommodation, 3 meals a day and cash, no questions asked, plus more chance of bagging a council house than anyone actually born here. Who wouldn't jump at the chance? But the setting aside of the border to make way for thousands of new arrivals every day is only a symptom of a homegrown sickness. Ironically, in the aftermath of all the damage done to the personal immune systems of millions, billions of people worldwide by the policies and medical practices of the past 2 years, Britain herself has been similarly weakened deep down. Instead of keeping the country safe and well, those entities supposed to function like the nation's immune system, Parliament, the institutions of state, the civil service, the judiciary, the police, have turned on the British people instead, and upon the structures that ought to protect us from harm. Like someone suffering from autoimmune disease, our national immune system is now destroying the healthy cells, which is to say us, the British people. Any country is a fiction when you get right down to it. For continued existence, every country depends on enough of the people who happen to occupy that space sharing the same idea about where they live. If enough people believe in the existence of Britain and are prepared to give their all to maintain Britain, then Britain prevails. If the day comes when too many have forgotten what Britain is, or simply don't care if she exists or not, then Britain is no more. The dry land will still be there, the roads and buildings, but that is all. This is the time of remembrance, when we claim to honour the ancestors who gave the last full measure of devotion to protect this country and see it handed on intact to future generations. When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we gave our today. Those words are graven in stone all over this country. Today's leaders have no loyalty to Britain or the British, none that I can see. Maybe a few still feel some loyalty, but are just too demoralised or scared to declare it, far less to do anything about it. Whatever loyalties the rest of them have, on both sides of the aisle, they lie elsewhere, not honestly declared. For one thing, they're loyal to those entities that do make all the meaningful decisions, which is to say the markets and the banks. It was the markets that wanted rid of Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, and so they went. Now we have Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister none of us voted for and therefore don't want. Like Jeremy Hunt, blatantly the market's choice of Chancellor, his loyalties lie anywhere but with Britain and the British. Imagine how both men drool at the prospect of a central bank digital currency and the surveillance society it will force upon us. If we are led by figures committed to objectives that are against our interests, are we even obliged to obey their diktats when they are undoing everything Britain has been? Are the needs and wants of the British people to be set aside in favour of the needs and wants of everyone else, anyone else in the world? I ask those questions sincerely. Since we're talking about the markets and the banks, we might as well focus on what it's all about, all of this upset and upheaval, which is control. Control of the people via control of our money. At a time when British people are struggling in ways that have been unknown to millions for a very long time, a vast mountain of the money they pay in tax is being shovelled elsewhere. For the crime of having been born in the home of the Industrial Revolution that changed the world for the better and lifted billions of people out of poverty, This latest generation of British people is to be punished, diminished, made dependent upon a state that openly despises us and treats us with contempt. Setting aside, for example, the fact that China has pumped out more pollution in the last 8 years than Britain managed in the 220 years since the Industrial Revolution began, more of the taxes paid by British people might be handed to the developing world, perhaps China included, who knows, as our penance for making it possible for 8 billion people to be alive in the world at the same time. Courtesy of cheap, efficient energy, plentiful food and all the benefits born of the modern medicine and technology our ancestors' efforts made possible. The fire kindled here more than 200 years ago made life better, made life possible for billions, and in return we are to be mugged in broad daylight, our wallets emptied and our hard-earned cash handed to anyone around the world that wants it. A good whack of China's recent output of CO2 came from burning coal to make our wind turbines and the rest of the vanity projects that let our remotely controlled leaders spout lies about cutting emissions. But hey-ho, never let the facts get in the way of a good global scam. Back to the point, British money, earned by hard-working, struggling British people, is being funnelled out of Britain and into the wider world as fast as the leaders can make it flow. Cynic that I am, I conclude that all possible efforts are being made to impoverish and so destroy once and for all that upstart aspirational middling class whose very existence so infuriates today's rulers. Natural law is summarised in 3 words: do not steal. It underpins all lawful behaviour. Do not steal the life of another. Do not steal the private property of another. Do not steal the product of a worker's labour, which is to say taxation. Do not steal a person's rights. Do not steal. It's simple, but that simple foundation of lawful society has been set aside for the benefit and enrichment of the few. Every day and more, those calling themselves our leaders are stealing everything. They look us in the eye and steal from us. During lockdown, they stole our rights and liberties. They stole the livelihoods of millions. They stole mental and physical well-being. They stole the way things used to be. They're stealing the futures we had planned for our children. There's a line of Latin that goes, quis custodiet ipsos custodes. It means, who will guard the guards themselves? Those words focus our attention on the situation that arises when people with the power to supervise others are not themselves subject to the same scrutiny. It applies also when those who entitle themselves to make the law also empower themselves to enforce the punishments. That is the definition of tyranny that our Constitution was shaped to prevent. There's a COVID inquiry out there. The same people that caused all the harm are now deciding if they did the right thing or not. I think we all know what conclusions they will draw. I ask again, who will guard the guards themselves? The UK Border Force, in place to protect and maintain the border, might as well be working in partnership with the people smugglers. The same company involved in border control has the government contract for housing asylum seekers. This is a conflict of interest alongside an inversion of their role. The police, a citizen police force supposed to protect the British public, does next to nothing to keep law-abiding citizens safe from real violent crime and instead monitors what people say on social media. When they're not being thought police, they either dance the Macarena with the protesters the state likes or take the baton to those that it doesn't. So, what should we do now? Philosopher Thomas Hobbes wrote about how without observance of right and wrong, human life was solitary, poor, nasty, brutish and short. He concluded that such chaos was ended only if individuals agreed via a social contract to surrender some liberty to a sovereign on condition that that sovereign would keep them safe. Who is honouring their part of our social contract now? We the people have been doing so, not least because legally we have no option. It's interesting to recall the words of the American Declaration of Independence, life, liberty and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organising its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. I say that by their actions over the last many years, our leaders have made the social contract null and void. They are not protecting our freedoms and rights, nor Britain herself. On the contrary, they are working in league with others to remove those rights and freedoms and to unmake Britain. If they will not honour the social contract, then why should we? While we were distracted, our governments assumed outrageous powers over us. Body and mind were being crushed and numbed. The time for accepting all of this has long passed. Here's the thing. Where should our loyalties lie now? With those who, by their actions, have made plain they respect us not a jot, or with each other, those who have seen through the lies and the transparent grasping for power and control. On this Remembrance Weekend, I would honour those who gave their lives for a free world and a country called Great Britain. All of that is my opinion, of course. You're free to disagree. Keep your tweets and emails coming all through the show. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk and you can tweet me as well at GBNews, and I'll try to get to some of your comments later in the show if time allows. Joining me throughout the show tonight, ethnographer and academic Dr. Lisa Mackenzie and the former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik. Lisa, where do you think our leaders' loyalties lie?
Honestly, I think our leaders' loyalties lie with themselves, each other, their personal gain, their career paths, and probably their own sort of close network, family, and who they see are people like them. That's where I think that our leaders, or that's where their loyalties are, if they have any loyalties at all, actually.
So who then will stand up for the people, millions of them, struggling?
This is where I think there is hope, because I think people, the millions of people out there in Britain today, I don't think they are as stupid or as dumb as perhaps other media organisations think they are, or how our political parties think they are. I think there is a lot of self-education happening. I'm not somebody that goes along thinking that everything on the internet is rubbish. I think people are finding for themselves how things make sense to them. You know, I live in I live in Nottinghamshire, and people do understand their own position. People are extremely political in how they understand where they are in the world, where their communities are in the world. They understand. So perhaps it's not leaders that we need. Perhaps it's platforms for each other.
That's a thought, isn't it, Lembit, that it's not leaders or these leaders that we need?
First of all, I found what you said fascinating, also Lisa. For a while, I was working on ships, doing talks in Cunard P&O, just regular ships. And one of the most popular discussions I held was what causes us to celebrate celebrity. And I came to the view that there's something called Maslow's hierarchy of need. It goes right back to 1942. And it's a study of the motivations that cause us to do things. And the 10-second version is, at times of peace and no great stress, we're more interested in things like self-esteem, and if we're really lucky, self-actualization, the big stuff, the philosophy. Times of crisis, it's about survival. And the irony here is, you don't get this rubbish at times of survival, you get real leaders. So in World War II, Churchill, flawed as he may have been, was a real leader. People didn't care about the details. They could see he was making right decisions. But now we've got this kind of softening of that. And so we talk about what Matt Hancock, former cabinet minister, ate in the jungle, rather than the things that you discussed.
So because we've got manufactured crises, manufactured by them, Yes. But you think subliminally or subconsciously the people aren't taking any of it seriously because they know it's not real?
Yeah, the social contract is broken. This actually goes back down to Jean-Jacques Rousseau, around 1762. I could be wrong about the year, so don't write in if I'm wrong, but it's around then that he came up with this concept which you described. What's interesting about the social contract is it requires consent. And what you read about the American Constitution requires consent. We're at a stage now where I vaguely agree with what Lisa said. We don't have great leadership coming from government. Sometimes we do get people who are very principled. I actually think one of them was Jeremy Corbyn, but he wasn't even respected by his own parliamentary party. You can agree or disagree, but he had a narrative. Other people, I think Paddy Ashdown was very instrumental at the halcyon time of my old party, the Lib Dems. But now we've gone somewhere soft, and it's not like...
My suspicion is that the leadership isn't there because Britain no longer is seen by those that make the real decisions to need that kind of leadership. You know, the decisions are being made elsewhere, and as long as we've got sock puppets that can appear behind podiums and read out a script... then it doesn't matter their quality.
You're absolutely spot on about the markets. Who, you know, where is policy coming from today? Well, it's actually coming from the markets, isn't it? The financialisation of almost everything. You know, this leader comes in, the markets don't like it, they're gone. This policy is floated, the markets don't like it, it's gone. But what I would say is, yes, we are perhaps looking in the wrong place for leaders. And you were talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and times of crisis. Well, there are people in our country now who have been in crisis for generations. So perhaps, you know, the usual sort of upper middle class, highly educated in particular schools and universities, perhaps they've never been the leaders. You know, I'm talking about people who are constantly... I come from a long line of miners. The first thing on the top of all our lists for generations was a roof over your head.
Yeah.
Now, that is at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Without a roof, without a home, you have nothing. There is nothing else.
And our leaders don't understand that. I'm going to have to go to a break. I'm sorry, Len, but we'll try and pick this up later on. After the break, I'll be joined by the historian and columnist Martin Whittock to discuss the enduring importance of Remembrance Sunday.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week. I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England,
Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio
and online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
news channel.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. If the British Empire's dead of World War I were to rise from their graves and march 4 abreast down Whitehall, it would take them 3.5 days marching day and night to pass the cenotaph. Since the end of that war, we've committed ourselves to remembering those dead, those that fell in the war that was supposed to end all wars and in every conflict since, in which our servicemen and women have been involved. I remember when it was quietly expected that when the last of the veterans of the First World War were dead, that the attention paid to Remembrance Day would begin to diminish. That didn't happen, however. Quite the contrary. We're now well past the 100th anniversary of that war. And yet, since our armed forces never cease to be involved in one conflict or another around the world, there are always more people to remember. The long march past the cenotaph may never end. Joining me now to consider the importance of remembrance is historian and columnist Martin Whittock. Good evening, Martin, and thank you for joining me.
Good evening, it's my pleasure.
Are we right, first of all, to keep remembering in this way?
I think we are. I taught history in UK comprehensive schools for 35 years, and on several occasions I went to the battlefields on tours that were led by a member of staff, colleague of mine who now works for the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. And one of the things that struck me whenever we did that was how seriously young people engaged with what we were doing. You know, we're talking about young people there away from home, some for the first time, and they took it immensely seriously. I used to lead the Remembrance Day assemblies at school, for example. Tomorrow, I'll be leading and preaching at a Remembrance Day service in the West Country. And one thing that struck me again and again is how seriously people engage with this day and see it, and this season really, and see it as a time to remember and to honour those who have in the past and still do die, risk their lives, face injury and suffering to protect freedoms we often take for granted. But I think it has another dimension to it as well. I think it challenges us to think, what should I be doing? What kind of person should I be in the here and now to defend those kind of values and to work for a world where these kind of conflicts don't happen again? So I think it's both a looking back and a looking forward. And I think that's one of the things that really challenged the young people that I was with. They saw it as being immensely relevant. They looked at a turbulent world and they said, there's a past aspect to this, but there's also a present and a future. What kind of world do I want? What kind of world am I building? I think it's a time of national reflection, consideration, solemn remembrance, but also looking at where we are now and where we're going as well. I think it's profoundly important. And I think the fact it's continued to be engaged with is the evidence that that is in fact the case.
Absolutely. I think that commitment that's still there in the young is very pertinent, very important. I was in Australia in 2015 in the run-up to the Gallipoli commemorations, and such was the desire to get to Gallipoli, to take part in the commemorations there, that Australia had to hold a ballot. You couldn't just go. It was going to be too much under pressure. And the number of young people that were taking part in that ballot, teenagers and people in their early 20s, whatever, that were wanting to pay and go to Gallipoli to show their respect, I think said something, that there's something fundamental in the human animal about remembering the dead. I think it's there.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. I want you to imagine a busy comprehensive school, my old school, 1,600 kids, all sorts of kids, the whole world's there. It's a comprehensive. It's in the middle of the day. 11 o'clock falls in the middle of their break time on the 11th of November. And we say that when we hear the bell, we're all going to fall silent, okay? 1,600 ordinary kids. And at 11 o'clock, the bell sounds.